Ulonka tabati yada to ye kuma daifa. Inu to ye ko je love bipa. Oba tala, oba takutakun. Songo eshu, ogun oya osun. Kini sheshe, tan she nile yo. O jelo jara.
Alafia, peace and blessings, peace and blessings. Welcome to another episode of the African Spirituality Experience. I am your host, Arisha Bami, and today we have back on none other than another legend in the consciousness movement, as well as in the African spiritual cultural movement. None other than Baba, Professor James Smalls. Peace and blessings, Baba. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. I'm good.
That's what's up.
Trying to be.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. First and foremost, I wanted to give a thanks, for taking the time to chop it up with me and the tribe again. The last one, it definitely made some splashes, made some waves in the Ashe community, man. The people was loving it. They was feeling it. And I give thanks again for you coming back to drop some more knowledge and wisdom within the community and the culture, Baba.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
But we're going to teach our people that they got to study if they want to learn.
That's facts.
And learning isn't by osmosis.
Right. Nah, that's real.
And so,
yes, sir.
We'll recommend some books today also.
Okay.
We think people need to read from some of the other minds in our community and get some wisdom. And
yes,
then
sir.
go from there.
Ashe.
Grow.
That's what's up. Yes, sir. So with that, before we get deep into it, Baba, I want to give a shout out first and foremost to the Jacksonville community. Shout out to St. Kofa 36720 Study Group for putting together the event that we got going on in Jacksonville in February. I'm looking forward to that one. And family, if you're watching the live stream, you'll see the link should be in the description of the podcast episode. If not, it's definitely on the channel. You can go to the Ashe channel, and the link should definitely be in the description there for the tickets for those who are in the Florida, Jacksonville area, or even the Southeast region. If you want to take a road trip to come chop it up with Professor Smalls in February to celebrate not only Black history, but the culture of melanated people across the globe. So I'm looking forward to that. And once again, shout out to Brother Umar for making that happen. And so with that, Baba, the situation and the topic at hand is, history and how significant that is for us to erase the colonizers' mystery and for us to begin to really set up and create the legacies and the dynasties that we, come from. So with that, what is the first orders of operation that you feel like we should do or we should be working on to get that process started, Baba?
Study your history.
Gotcha.
I mean, you can't possibly think you can be free if you don't have a clue who you are. It's like a tree in the forest that can't tell the difference between the tree and the wind, or the tree and the sand, or the tree and the brush, or the tree and the bird. Then the tree doesn't exist. And if you don't exist, how can you be struggling to be free? You first have to define who you are, so you can define what you want to be free from. Okay. And African peoples, no matter where you live, whether it's Brazil, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, where we have millions and tens of millions of Black people, just like I say in North America. We want to be white people. White people will mix with us, but they don't give up their white identity to mix with us. Okay. Jewish people mix with other white people and everybody else, but they don't give up their Jewish identity to mix with nobody, to be involved politically, economically, culturally. You live in a society where you've got to be involved with all of these other people, but you do not have to give up your identity to do that. Now, initially, our identity was taken away through terror and genocide, but we've had 400 years of struggle to restore that identity. And we never lost it all, and everybody never even lost most of it. But the terrorism of white America restricted how we could display it. But we've defeated much of that terrorism But now we caught up under the control of the mental terrorism from white terrorism. There was no such thing as white supremacy. It's just white murder, white genocide against African people. And so I'm not interested in white people who speak Spanish. They're white people and they act like white people. I'm interested in the Black people who speak Spanish, who's suffering under the foot of the white people who speak Spanish. Just like the Black people in North America who speak English suffer under the foot of the white people in North America who speaks English. And the Black people in Brazil who speak Portuguese suffer under the foot of the white people in Brazil who speak Portuguese. And we have to learn to delineate this if we're going to understand history and not have Black people thinking my identity is a language when they speak Spanish. Your language is not your identity, nor is your language your race, nor is your language your culture. Just like English is the language of our murderers and genociders and oppressors that we've been forced to learn, so is Spanish to the Black people who have been forced to learn that. And so I just want to make that clear up front coming out of the gate, because we get caught up in the melanated people and the people of color and the da-da-da-da-da, and we're not delineating who the hell we're really talking about. I'm talking about African people. If you speak Spanish, then you're African, you're Africans. If you speak English, then you're Africans, you're Africans. We can call it melanated, that's cool, as long as we're clear that the root of that is in the continent of Africa. The majority of Black-skinned people in the world call themselves Africans. And I'm not going to disrespect that, but then, well, that ain't the word and that ain't the name. People have a right to call themselves what the hell they want to. And this is where we arrived at. We could pick another 20 name. We can pick Ethiopia, but that's a Greek word. And yet we act like it's an African word. We can pick Moors, but that's an English word. And we act like it's an African word. So what do most African people in the world call themselves? They call themselves Africans. Okay? That's the reality. So let's stop finding excuses not to deal with the fundamental reality that we're faced with. And the fundamental reality is ignorance of who we are, ignorance of our history and culture. History is just a set of experiences you've had through time. What are those experiences that your ancestors had? What are the experiences that their ancestors had? What was the cause and effect in those experiences? Who were our friends in those experiences? Who are our enemy? What was our rules and regulation that govern our behavior? What was our culture before we met our enemy? What was our language before we met our enemy? What was our accomplishments in our communities, in our world, in our kingdoms before we met the white European or the half-breed Arabs? You know, and because they got color, we're gonna call them brothers. No, brother, it's a behavior. Okay. Behavior. And no behavior. Brotherhood was shown towards us 1,500 years before we even got involved in the white man enslaving African across the Atlantic. We had 1,500 years of Arab, Muslim, Turks enslaving us in Europe, in India, in China, etc. We call that the Trans-Saharan slave trade, the Trans-Indian Ocean slave trade, okay? The Trans-Middle Eastern slave trade, run by our Muslim brothers and sisters. Let's get clear. Islam didn't stop them from doing all that harm and damage, burning our cities and our villages and raping and marauding our people. And the Christian white demons that came in tapped into that system that was nearly 2,000 years old. And if you look at any of the early paintings and drawings that the Portuguese and the others did of those who brought us from the hinterland, because most of us are not from coastal Africa, all right? Most of us is from inland Africa, mainly Kemet, Sudan, Congo, Angola, and those places. And we were marched to these ports in Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, because that was the Atlantic coastline and the deep water. and the tiny little people are people who are on the coastline. We're not tiny little people. You know, the average height of our brothers and sisters on the coastline is about 4 feet something, 5 feet. The average height of the African Americans is 6 feet. You know, so the average tone of our skin tone is brown to dark brown. The average skin tone on the coast is black to dark black. We need to ask what went on the continent. Who was it that was being enslaved? Who was it? And in all of the paintings and the sketches I've seen, the people marching out to the shores got on turbans and white robes, and they're dressed like what we see the Muslims are dressed. We haven't even questioned the role of Islam in West Africa and all of the jihads that went on in the 1400, 1500, and 1600s, where they sold their prisoners of war to the white man. Because Elijah Muhammad and Malcolm and Drew Ali brought us Islam as a way to get out of a white American Christianity. We got so beholden to that, giving us an opportunity to break away from white Christian dominance. We didn't examine what harm that had done to us before we got here. For the fact that millions of Africans, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions, who were sold were already Muslims before they were sold into slavery over here. Hundreds of thousands was already Christians before they were sold into slavery over here.
Wow.
We had a different brand of Christianity, right? Now, some had the conversion that was done by the slave catchers who came, but many had the Christianity of the Sudan, which was 1,500 years older than the Catholic Church and the Protestant Reformation in Europe.
Wow.
You know, Sudan had more churches than Ethiopia. It's just that it got conquered and destroyed by the Muslims, and much of the churches destroyed. But those churches weren't the same as what it grew out of the Catholic Church. The Ethiopian church is 500 years older than the Catholic Church. And the Catholic Church is, 1,000 years older than the Protestant churches of Europe. So we need to examine these things when we start talking about our belief in singing Amazing Grace.
Yeah.
A poem that was written by a murdering, raping slave ship runner and owner. And talk about, oh, well, he found Jesus. Yeah, right. After his gut was full and his mansions were built from the rape and robbing and enslaving of African people, he found Jesus. And we sing such a filthy song in our churches because we can make it sound good. We can make anything sound good.
That part.
You know, you got Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace. And we singing a murderous poem, a rapist poem, and we call it our anthem. That's mental and spiritual damage. Or getting up in the morning singing, in a few days everybody be going jingle bell, jingle bell. And then jingle bells isn't about Christmas at all. Jingle bells was about the bell that they had around our head when we tried to run away.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That's what the song was written for. The jingling of the bell on the enslaved African neck.
Wow.
And head, so that it can be heard. So the slave catcher and his one horse open sleigh can chase him down.
Wow.
That's why the song was written. It had nothing to do with Christmas. Right? But it got factored into Christmas because the Santa Claus things was brought in, which was a Johnny come lately to the Christmas story too.
Right. Wow.
But I ain't bothered. Y'all gonna spend your money to the white man you say hate you. Go ahead and make what's that one name, Moth richer, and make I go on Facebook to you. You're buying all these evil rich white men, but right now y'all giving them billions of dollars in the next month.
Wow.
And then come and calling me trying to beg up $100 to get over, you know. And I fought the system all my life. I don't even have a retirement package because I made a choice. It was freedom or death.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah.
But I'm trying to make the point about why history erases mystery.
Yeah.
If you know your history. You don't get caught up in fantasy.
Mm.
And even with the Ethiopian Christian Church and the Sudanic Christian Church, which is older than the Catholic Church and older than the European Protestant Church, was not born in Africa.
Mm.
All right. They were born out of the minds of Black people, or Black people who lived in Egypt, who found the Egyptian Coptic Church. It is the Egyptian Coptic Church and the Black people who were in Turkey who created the church in what was called the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Church. Those are the two churches that gave birth to the Ethiopian Church.
Wow.
Now, the Ethiopian put its own twist on it through the centuries, you know, just like Black Americans put our own twist on Christianity given to us after slavery.
Right.
Because most of us didn't know nothing about Christianity going to church during slavery. That's a myth on how we go to church during slavery. That's bull. Most Black folks got into Christianity after slavery. And it was a thing that they yearned to do because it was the one day and it was in the one place they can have sanctuary safe from white people.
Yeah.
And could act like Black people, act like African people, do our dances and sing our songs.
Wow.
You know, and talk to our inner divine. But we had to hide in that church. That was the only sanctuary we had. Later, we would build sanctuaries like the Freemasonic Lodge and the Daughters of Ruth and the Daughters of Isis and the Daughters of Tent. These were all secret society, benevolent Black organization we built between slavery and 1945. Okay, the Odd Fellows, you understand? The Knights of Pythias. These were the sanctuaries we had, and they were all tied to the church because the church was the greatest sanctuary where white folks thought, well, they're safe over there. You ain't got to worry about what they're doing. We got them.
Right.
But we were in those churches, we were building Black Wall Streets in Tulsa, Black Wall Streets in Wilmington, Black Wall Streets in multiple parts of Florida, Black Wall Streets in Durham, North Carolina. We even had a city in Durham named Haiti, named after Haiti. Building Black communities in Brooklyn, New York, building Black communities in Staten Island, New York, expanding the Black community in New Orleans. That's what we were doing. Now, the terrorism that's called Jim Crow, which was probably worse than chattel slavery in many ways, because in Jim Crow, they just criminalized the whole Black being. Okay. Jim Crow was just an extension of slavery.
Right.
After the crackers from the North and the South got together and created the Hayes Compromise and pulled the troops out of the South and ended what was called, what did they call that period? With the little pretty word, Reconstruction. You know, nothing was reconstructed except the white folks was reconstructed back into running the Confederacy without slavery now being a reason to destroy it. Because they hid slavery under a label that was later called Jim Crow, where they took away 100% of our rights, you know, and used a legal term they created called vagrancy to come and pick up any Black man they want and put him in prison and rent him out to the same plantations they were freed from. So we need to know the history to erase the mystery.
Yeah.
You need to listen to the life story of someone like Queen Mother Moore, extraordinary African revolutionary lady, born in the 1800s, who was a Garveyite and who she just did so many things. People need to look up Queen Mother Moore. That was, she surpassed Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad in terms of the work and efforts that she did.
Wow.
But if you don't study, you'll be caught in somebody else's mystery. We tend to only glorify the leaders that the white media glorified because they were scared of them. Not to put down Malcolm, and everybody know I love Malcolm, I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I love Dr. King, but there were leaders greater than them who didn't make it in the media because the media didn't want to promote what they were doing.
Wow. Nat Turner's. I mean, even though he made it, but it sounds like you're talking about they have that sort of. I'm not beating down the Black people who had to do the work they had to do, and Malcolm and the others who did the work they did. I'm just saying there were people out here who did greater works. Wow.
We never even heard their name because the white media didn't project their names.
Right.
for the reason that they project the names we saw, because those people was putting a fear into them at a certain level. Those names get projected, but it was Ida B. Wells wasn't nobody to play with. Okay. T. Thomas Fortune founded the Afro-American League in 1892, before Malcolm founded the OAAU.
What was his name again, Baba? I'm taking notes.
Afro-American League.
Okay.
1892. Founded by a group of women from Rochester, New York, along with the brother they put in the leadership called T. Thomas Fortune. That's the organization that evolved into the Niagara movement. And the Niagara movement evolved into the NAACP. But it started as the Afro-American League. Booker T. Washington was in it, Du Bois was in it, Ida B. Wells was in it, T. Thomas Fortune was in it, and others. History erases the white man's mystery. And the NAACP was not founded by white people. The mistake we made was to bring some white people in as partners in order to try to get into the governmental system. And then we got backstabbed by the crackers. We got backstabbed. But we still were able to use that NAACP and its legal arm to break down many of the criminal laws under what was called Jim Crow slavery. You know? But we'll learn who our friends are and who our enemies are. When Black folks finally took total leadership of the NAACP in the late 1970s, early 80s, our so-called liberal white religious friends took the legal arm and ran away and called it the Greenberg legal something. That tells you who they are, right? And without the legal arm, the NAACP had no teeth. So long as they could manage and control what it was fighting, the legal arm was there. But the way they legally organized it, when we broke away and took the leadership and became the chair and the president of it, then they took the legal arm away, our liberal friends. History will erase the mystery. It'll tell you who our friends really were. And it'll tell you who the fake friends really were, pretending to be our friends so we could change laws that empowered them in the South. And once we changed those laws that empowered them, they joined forces with the same people we fought against to change the laws, but still tried to pass themselves off as our liberal friends. Everybody know who I'm talking about. We ain't gonna call their name.
Yeah, we know what it is.
Use that.
We know what it is.
We know what we know. History will erase the mystery. And there's a book everybody had to read. It's by what's my great brother name? The book is right there on the shelf. But it's called Plural But Equal.
How you spell that, Bubba?
Plural but equal. Where the hell?
Oh, plural but equal. I got you.
Yeah.
Plural but equal. Okay.
And by Dr. Harold Cruz.
Okay.
Dr. Harold Cruz. Everybody needs to read that book because he analyzes the civil rights movement, show you who the betrayers are, show you who the liars are, show you how we were played out of pocket from a desegregation movement that we were fighting, and our liberal friends used their money and their press to play us out of pocket into an integration movement, which was never our objective, which allowed us to abandon our financial and economic basis to become partners in theirs, where they never really let us become anything more than consumers and never partners. History erases the mystery, you know, and we need to be clear on how we do that. I know I got to come back to what your topic is, but this is just my opening up, kind of like letting folks know what's on my mind.
Listen,
so that we
don't
get
24 minutes. No, I want to say just in that little bit of time, Baba, you dropped the whole damn history lesson. Like I never knew the Jingle Bells thing. I never heard of that before. Tell me, that's the link to the book, Baba. I was talking about.
That's the least of it. We talk about the Back to Africa movement. Well, how are you going to have a Back to Africa movement and you don't mention Martin Delaney? who coined the term back to Africa, by the way, who went to Africa before the Civil War to get land to take the rest of us back home, and was given the land in Nigeria in an area called Abeokuta. Hundreds of thousands of acres and all that we wanted. Because his grandfather came from Abeokuta and was enslaved in the U.S. So this Martin Delaney, this is the same Martin Delaney who goes to Harvard University and get a medical degree, and white folks wouldn't let him march, him and 4 other brothers, because the other cracker boys didn't want to march with these black men who had also become MDs. So they had to have their own separate little graduation. That Martin Delaney, who became a major in the Civil War in the 54th Massachusetts. Right? That Martin Delaney, who had gone to Africa to find a home for his people. And while he was there, this thing with the Civil War began to brew. And he thought, well, okay, maybe we can win our freedom if we help to defeat, the South.
Right.
And then he let up off of the trying to get us to go back to Africa and came to fight for the war. But after the war, he realized that much didn't change. And he became the biggest advocate for going to Liberia. He moved to Charleston, South Carolina. He left the Republican Party, which was the party of Lincoln, because that Republican Party of Lincoln is what we call the Democratic Party of today. And just like they betrayed us in the time of Lincoln, they're betraying us today. And so he joined the then Democratic Party of that day and moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and became one of the biggest movers of people from here to Liberia. And let's get rid of some of the Liberian myth. Okay, many of the tribal brothers and sisters in Liberia was involved in the slave trade, selling us to these white people.
Wow.
And was still doing it at the founding of Liberia. Yes, the group of white folks who got together and created what they call the American Colonization Society. That had nothing to do directly with we gonna come in and colonize no space. That was the term for anybody going on any other land in another space. Those black folks who went to Liberia paid their money and they bought that land. They shouldn't have to pay a penny. Somebody sell you into slavery and take your land away, take your kingdom away, murder your wife and burn the sister and burning your village and sell you away, and you got to pay to go back home. You got to pay to go back home. That shit's still going on today. Why am I paying to go back home? I'm a refugee. I'm a prisoner of war.
Right.
History validates that. I'm a refugee and a prisoner of war from the continent of Africa. I shouldn't pay shit for 1 foot of land anywhere in Africa. No diasporan shit. But we did. Just like I bought land in Ghana, I shouldn't have had to buy it. I should have came home, somebody should say, brother, here's your land, here's your stool, here's your skin that belonged to your ancestors. We were just holding it and care until you return. That's not what nobody's saying. They're treating me like I'm some alien stranger.
And I heard they had some sort of program where they were supposed to be doing that, Baba. Is there any truth to that?
Ghana has done that to some degree.
Okay.
But minimally, not as a national policy.
I got you.
And what Ghana has done is given citizenship. This last go round, they gave 540 something to diasporans from the Caribbean and United States. That's a nice little step. And thank you, Ghana, for doing that. But we're talking about a continent big enough to put America in, China in, Britain in, Eastern European in, and Russia in, and still have space that I was stolen from. And my land is still there.
Yeah.
My stool is still there. Right? My skin is still there. Why do I have to pay? Why am I not offered the right of return? Same right of return that Africans vote to give to the Jews to go to Israel. The same right of return you give to the Syrians who are now going back home. The same right of return you've given to everybody. Why haven't I been offered that right of return? So they come back to Liberia. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Black movement in a way. I was right up on the front line. And I think it was, I forgot what year, I'm in Boston. 1975 or 1976. And I had a young brother living in our house. We lived in Malcolm X's sister's house, Ella's house. And he was a member of the Liberian Student Association in Massachusetts, where he became the chair. And they were all invited to Detroit that year for a big meeting. It turned out it was a meeting with the U.S. State Department, who was plotting the overthrow of the government in Liberia. You hear what I'm saying? When this brother, let me back up and tell you who the brother is. First, when he became the leader of Liberian students in Massachusetts, I'm not going to call his name for the sake of him and his family.
Yeah. Is this the story you were telling me the other night when we were talking?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought,
and he was a security guard at this insurance building. One day somebody came downstairs and told him they'd considered him for a new job. He was moved from being a security guard to being an executive in the insurance company. When he came home and told us that, we said, whoa, what's up wrong with that, brother? They don't move from being a security guard. Now you got a briefcase and a three-piece suit and you rolling. So the next thing, he gets invited to come to Detroit for this meeting, national meeting of Liberian students. And those Liberian who's alive know I'm telling the truth. And that's where you plotted with the US CIA and the State Department, the Rice Rebellion in Liberia. When this brother refused to go along with them, they arrested him and put him in prison for 5 years, said he stole $50 worth of food stamps. And when he was let out of prison years later, he was deported back to Liberia. I remember that day when he come to my house, he didn't even have a coat. And it was in the middle of the winter freezing, and I gave him the only overcoat I had and took him to the airport. But by then the damage was done, because the Rice Rebellion led to the CIA-backed coup led by a dude named Samuel Doe. Okay. And the reason for the coup was the murder of the President Talbot, who had just became the president of the OAU.
Wow.
And they did not want an African-American African as president of the OAU, because Talbot was a partner with Sékou Touré of Guinea. And they had to murder him before he could assume his role as president of OAU. And so that's the Samuel Doe coup. I even knew a brother who was in the room when they murdered Talbot. A kid from the farm country, was in a boarding school across the street from the palace, and that where Talbot had set up to bring all his kids from the rural area to get them educated in the city, contrary to what the lies about his administration was about. But he was murdered, and Liberia was overthrown to keep him from taking the leadership of OAU. Do you hear me? So we need to study history and erase the crackers' mystery.
Yeah.
And the brother even told me how he was killed. I'm just listening to this. Because the young brother who was telling me was a kid, right? He was preteen when this occurs. But now he's my student that's 18 years old at City College, New York, sitting in my office telling me the story.
Wow.
Right. And he said, Brother Small, they brought us over to watch them execute Talbot. And so we sitting on the floor. And he said that they wanted to get the juju out of him because he had gotten juju from Sékou Touré. And I know if they didn't get to kill this juju, then Liberia would fall to Sékou Touré in Guinea. This is the myth they put into the children's head. Right? And he says, and the juju was like a black bird. He tried to come out of head first, and they bash him in the head, and the juju bird go back in the head. And then the juju tried to come out his mouth, but then they slit his throat, and the juju went back in his throat. But the juju tried to break out his chest, and they bust his chest open. Now, I'm a Freemason. I'm a Prince Hall Mason. That was a Masonic execution. Those are the 3 places you inflict the death wound on a 33-degree Mason, which Talbot was. Hello?
Yeah.
Study history and erase the crackers' mystery.
So that's genocide within the organization of the Masonry.
No, these are white Masons working through the CIA to kill a black Mason who was one of the headquarters for Prince Hall Masonry was not in New York, it was in Liberia. Then they went on to burn and sack the Masonic Lodge. Do you ever hear anybody burn and sack a Masonic Lodge?
Nope.
Then they went and burned and sacked the AME churches. Did anybody tell you that part of the story?
Nope.
Then they went on to try to kill the head of every family that represented the original African Americans settlers in Liberia. Did they tell you that part of the story?
Nope.
Did they tell you going back that land that they were living on, they bought it with their money. Nobody gave it to them and they didn't take it from anybody. And did they tell you that there was no such thing as a Liberia? These people went there, bought that land, and in that land they built a nation called Liberia. History will erase the mystery and the lies. Just out of that battle and a genocide wreaked on the Liberian people, led by Samuel Doe and the American CIA, plotted in Detroit just before the Rice Rebellion by the State Department of the United States. Hello. History will erase the mystery. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where stuff happens, right? When you're in the movement, you do get to see parts and bits and pieces of this stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It goes further than that. The guy who carried out the actual assassination of President Talbot, he gets killed in his sports car on the way to the airport. Ain't that some shit? So now we've cut all connections, right?
Well, I tell you, man, look, it's been the same plays from the beginning.
Same plays. We ain't keeping the game because we're not studying the history, and we constantly bamboozled by the mystery.
Yep.
Right. And I hope my people are listening.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't just start saying these things when I got old. I was saying this shit 30 years ago, but nobody listening.
Yeah.
Charles Taylor, who is of the African American resettlement bloodline, was married to the granddaughter of Ufwet Bwani. Ufwet Bwani was the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and the most powerful black man in West Africa at that time. And it was the French ruler of the Francophone consciousness on the continent. So when Charles Taylor, who originally is working with what's the one name? Samuel Doe in the CIA. Taylor breaks away and runs away to America. They say, oh, he stole money. They arrested him in Boston. But somebody breaks him out of prison, but they never tell you who breaks him out of prison. French intelligence breaks him out of prison because Ufwet Bwani said, my son-in-law ain't going to be in no jail in America. And the French needed Ufwet Bwani. Anybody want to look up Ufwet Bwani, the president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, you'll understand why the French would break his granddaughter's husband out of jail in Boston. And why the French would help to finance him and his revolution against Samuel Doe. Okay.
Yeah.
The wife of one of his partners, one of Charles Taylor's partners, was a very good friend of mine. I'm not going to call her name. She was a nurse and she was from the United States. And that brother's name was Francois Massaquoi. Francois Massaquoi was murdered, obviously, by the Americans when his helicopter was shot down in Liberia. He was Minister of Youth and Recreation under Taylor. But his Massaquoi traditional area, one of the largest diamond areas in Liberia, bordering right on the diamond field in Sierra Leone. Charles Taylor and Francois and others was trying to take control of both the diamond fields in Liberia and the diamond fields in Sierra Leone for the sake of African liberation in the way the brothers in the Sahel are doing today. So they vilified a brother in Liberia and Sierra Leone, saying he was cutting off children's hand and all that shit. shit that they were doing in the Congo and won't talk about till this day. And the opposition to freedom in Liberia was the De Beers Company out of South Africa. So they finally captured his brother, tortured him, stuff. He died eventually. I forgot his name, from a stroke. Right. And then the crackers started the term calling blood diamonds.
Yeah.
Even made a movie about it with this handsome little white boy talking about blood diamonds, meaning any diamond an African sells off from his own field is blood diamonds. Nobody in the world can buy that. Only buy the diamond that we, the thief, sanction for you to buy.
Right.
History will erase the mystery.
Facts.
I know more than that. Because the head of the Sierra Leone CIA was a friend of a girlfriend of mine who works for the BBC, whose husband had been killed by the then corrupt government in Sierra Leone. And she brought the head of the Sierra Leone CIA to me when he escaped the country with all of the files.
Wow.
Which I stored in my basement for some 5 years with a promise never to copy any. I read anything I wanted to. And when he came back to get his product, I gave it to him.
Wow.
And I remember a story he told me one day. He says, Pops, he said, while me and my man were trying to save as many of our people as we can, we got to a house and it was full of Jewish rabbis. And he said, they have about $1 billion worth of diamond on the table. And they told us, take all the diamonds we want, just help them save their lives.
Wow. I
said, what'd you do with the diamonds? He said, we didn't take a penny, because if we had touched those diamonds, they would hunt us down for the last day of our life.
Yep.
He said, we didn't save them and we didn't touch the diamond. We just saved our people.
I know that's right. Y'all figure it out.
Study the history and you won't be lost in the white man mystery. Running around here with foolish terms like a Mero Liberian and like there was any other Liberian. They built that country. They bought that land and then had to fight those who were still engaged in the slave trade to end slavery in that area. And let's talk the truth. So many of our people from here, and these were not the people who were enslaved. The reason those crackers started the colonization society was to get rid of the free blacks because they were afraid of rebellion from them to free the ones who were still enslaved.
Wow.
Okay. So the people who go to Liberia, these are the free blacks. They went voluntarily. Nobody pushed them. They wanted to go back home and was made to pay to go back home from which they were sold. Don't play with me.
I know that's right.
You know, history will erase the mystery. So study the history. I'm telling you, let's see some of my good Liberian history books. I got on the shelf. I should be able to recommend at least one before the day is over.
I got a book I could recommend, Bubba. Matter of fact, we spoke about this one because I would love to get into Haiti and like what's going on over there in Haiti and how that kind of plays into.
Well, I mean, Haiti, they ain't that crazy. My cousin just called me the other day, emailed me and said, James, I'm having a good time down in Haiti. We went on a cruise. And so if Janet and her sister Joyce and the cousins, they're all down there having a good time in Haiti, what's going on in Haiti? But they're taking what's going on around the capital, Port-au-Prince, and make that what's going on in all of Haiti.
So that's all.
Right down the road from the capital of Port-au-Prince, less than a 15-minute drive, you get to one of the wealthiest cities in Haiti, called Pétionville, where all the wealthy rulers live. It's like being in New York City. You won't even know that shit is going on in Port-au-Prince.
Wow.
Do you hear me?
Yeah. Nah, I
believe the other way.
I know you would.
You go the other way. Where planes, when they were saying no planes was going to Haiti, that was a lie. In Cape Haitian, planes was landing every day. In Cape Haitian, the cruise ships are coming every day. What it is, America wants to control the raw materials of Haiti.
Yes.
America, Britain, France, Canada, Brazil.
Yep.
And Israel. And they want the what's that metal that comes from outer space from the
uranium?
No, not uranium. What was the name of the metal in the Black Panther?
Vibranium. Vibranium.
Okay, yeah, they call it vibranium, but it's called something else in Haiti, very close to that. It's the meteorite. Haiti's got mountains of meteorite.
Mm.
It is the most heat-resistant metal in the world.
Cobalt.
No, not cobalt. That's a whole other thing.
Gotcha.
This thing is more expensive than cobalt. This thing's costs billions of dollars a ton.
Wow.
Uridium.
Uridium, yeah.
Uridium.
Right. Yep.
So they got the uridium, they got gold, they got diamonds. So they can. That's what this is about, and it's about, you know, the strait where the ship goes between Cuba and Haiti to get to the Panama Canal.
Mm-hmm.
America wants to keep control of that, so they don't have the decency to tell Haiti, we will rent this piece of land from you, and we will pay you a fair price.
Of course not.
But tell Cuba the same thing. So they're still occupying Guantanamo when the contract on Guantanamo has been up for decades.
Yeah. And
they're occupying the islands of Haiti in and around that strait, plus part of Haiti's mainland.
Mm-hmm.
They have the biggest hemisphere. In Little Haiti, you've got the biggest American embassy in this hemisphere.
Yep.
Because that's where they're running all their intelligence operation to control the Caribbean from.
Yep. Not to mention pillaging the resources, and it's still retaliation from the Haitian Revolution and from Fidel Castro with his revolution. So it's all like a compound of all the
so all that's a part of the same thing. Except we got to study history so we don't get caught up in the mystery. That and even for the Haitian people who fought such a valiant revolutionary war and defeated the French and defeated the Spanish and defeated the British and defeated the Americans to establish the Republic of Haiti. When they killed Delaney, they retarded the revolution. The revolution is not complete. So let's stop acting historically like it's complete. It was an extraordinary effort towards a completion. We did get to establish the Free Republic, the first in the world of an enslaved population that we know of. The world is too old to say what we know. But what happened to the revolution? You know, I'm a priest like you. I'm Obenjoko Adebayo. My shrine is in Trinidad, but there's about 75 Yoruba shrines that's been in the bush since the days of slavery. But my shrine is not a Yoruba shrine, it's a combination. My shrine came to Haiti out of Caracou, Grenada. It's an island off of Grenada. It came to Caracou from Haiti after the death of Delaney and the open attack on the voodoo movement began.
Yeah, I just saw Zili Danto had they had an ancestral reverence for Baba Delaney recently. I think yesterday. I saw that on her Instagram.
No, the point is we need to study and know our history.
Yeah.
In order to erase the mystery of the demon. That Sister Ezeli Danto call them the demon rats. So, of the demon rats, right? Not what that's what they're called.
I like that one. But
when we study history, we erase the lies and the mystery. Right? And it's important. And so I just wanted to bring some of those things up because I hear them all the time. And this is the last piece. This is the third piece with my silly brothers and sisters in North America. Talking about we didn't come from Africa. Well, where the hell did we come from?
I've been seeing that online too. I don't know what these people got with this.
No, those are cowards who don't want to take responsibility for African liberation. See, if you don't want to take responsibility for something, you disconnect yourself from it, but try to do it with some dignity by saying, I got another identity. Negro, you ain't got no other identity. Look at me, and even you. I am one of those whose family was here before the slave ships.
Yes, sir.
But my people just came from Africa before the slave ship made it here.
Yeah.
By a few centuries.
Gullah Geechee.
You know.
Both of us.
Yeah. So most of us married into those that came off of the slave ship. But the majority of us died from the disease the cracker brought with them. Because we didn't have enough immunity. So stop acting like there's some separate hidden Black community somewhere tucked under a rock that y'all just discovered. I used to go and clean the graves. We didn't bury underground. Grandpa would take us and we would go twice a year and we would clean the mounds of the leaves and the debris and the rots. And we would restore them until they looked like beautiful hills with water and with the rakes and the different things, even with rags. And then we would place back on there all the artifacts that they had on it when we came, the spoons, the pots, the machete, which the handle had now rotted off, and many, many other things that they covered the mounds with that were they graved in a place called Oak Hill, South Carolina, by the Walkmore and Petey River, where they meet together in a place now called Pauley's Island, on a space that's called Acadia Plantation. I lived through that. So I'm hearing y'all coming up with your mythology. We and Papa had told us we never pushed that part of our life because people would thought we would be rejecting our African part of our life, right? So sometimes we would say, yeah, we Indians, you know, and we know the very nation of the Asiatics that we married into. They're called the Chokoras. The headquarters for the Chokora Nation is in
Louisiana?
And the Chokoras in Andrews, South Carolina. A lot of our people ended up on the reservation in North Carolina, where they just label all of us Cherokees. We've been up there at least twice having family reunions. So if you think you know me, you don't really know me. You know? So, and we had to get those up there who done got to be white skinned now. I remember when we went to the last family reunion, only about 20 people came from the reservation. And so I went into the powwow and broke up the powwow. I said, what's wrong with you, Negro? They wanted to call the police, but the elders told them, no, don't call the police. Well, how y'all going to sit here, you know, putting on shows for white tourists and not coming to your family reunion because you think your lighter skin have washed away your Africanness? Next day, a little bit more of them showed up at the damn family reunion.
That's right. In the words of the ancestor Malcolm, who taught you to hate yourself?
The Africans who came over here from Mali, thousands and thousands of them, married into the Asiatics who came across the Bering Strait. The yellow race and the black race produced the red race. Okay? The blacks who came even before them, who built in Mexico and the Central America Peninsula, the Mayans and so forth and so on, they also married into the Asiatics, who we now call them Latinos.
Yeah, that's
this isn't the first place we were before where we were. We were everywhere before anybody else.
Yeah.
We were in Australia before anybody. We were in New Zealand before anybody. We were in Venezuela before anybody. We were in Argentina before anybody. We were in Russia before anybody. We were in Britain before anybody.
Yeah.
Okay? We were in Scotland before any white folks. We were in Ireland before any white folks. So stop being stupid, Black people. Stop being cowards. Yes, we got some rift between the new coming brothers and the ones who've been here. Let's settle those rifts, because most of those rifts have to do with slavery and colonial dominance of our consciousness and the lack of knowledge of our history.
Yes, sir.
And let's be talking about the unification of African people, no matter who came first. And some even go back and say, oh, a sister came up to me after the election and said, well, Brother Small, you know about Pangea? I said, we were teaching about Pangea before you was born. And you know nothing about Pangea except Pangea, when the supposed continents were all one. That is a theory. There's no historical facts. There are historical facts to show that West Africa was up against part of North America and South America. There is a concept called continental drift that's still going on right now. So we're talking about a breakaway that took place tens of millions of years ago. Not 1,000 years ago, tens of millions of years ago.
Wow. And
was expanded when we had the glacier, the melting of the last glacial period that created what we now call the Atlantic Ocean. A lot of spaces in the Atlantic Ocean, like the Gran Canary Islands and what's the other, Bermuda, and you could almost walk from those places back to the continent of Africa.
Wow.
Before the ice melted. That's what that whole story about Atlantis is. It's about all that land just off of the coast of the Rock of Gibraltar Strait and the Grand Canaries. I was stationed in the Grand Canary Islands when I was in the American Navy, but I didn't have enough consciousness to know where I was. It wasn't until later that I began to understand, and then studying and reading and began to understand. But it's for the young people, study history. Stop running with half truth and pieces of truth and emotional bull to make you feel better because you haven't done anything to fight for your freedom.
Yep.
You know,
that part.
Cowards don't make leaders. Cowards make enemy to the group they're a part of. Stop being coward. Yes, we were here before anybody else. Yes, we were everywhere before anybody else. How are you going to sit and deny that slavery took place? That's so ridiculous, it's not to be believed.
Yeah.
You know. And so I just want to kind of like touch on that a little bit. But read David Imhotep's book, you know, the first American for Africans. And look at his bibliography. It's extensive. Read Ivan Van Sertima's book. It's extensive. And I forgot what this Jewish fellow's name who did some good work. And there's been a number of others. Read Columbus' memoirs. You know, Columbus never came to the United States. He never came to North America. I think he might have touched Trinidad, and he did touch, you know, the islands of Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic today. And even there, he found Black people. He referred to them as Ethiopians. His brother wrote in his diaries about the Ethiopians he met. They met two groups of people here. They met the Asiatic and the Africans. And then they met the Asiatic and the African Union, which we call the Red Man. There ain't no red man no place else in the world but America.
Yeah.
And that's where the yellow man and the black man got in that bed and hit him. And I'm sure they enjoyed themselves. You know, hitting the next manifestation of themselves. But study the history. Get history to back you up. Stop getting fragments of knowledge to give you an excuse to attack yourself and practice self-hate and self-denial and trying to clean it up by saying we are a separate people. Where did you come from? Drop out of the moon?
And Black people are out that way too. If we're going to go there.
If there's any people up there, we're there.
That's a whole nother conversation. Yeah, you want to talk about the moon,
we know
Mars?
The white man did not go to the moon. We know that whole moon thing was faked out in the desert. And they pulled it off. Let me tell you, we just saw it the other day. I'm watching TV, me and my wife, and CNN is doing a story on it was so funny not to be believed. They're doing a story on Syria. And this news reporter, they had been going to these prisons for days. All the prisons are empty. They don't know. They don't brag about how all these people are in prison. Now they get there and ain't nobody in any prisons, right? They don't talk about all these torture chambers. They can't find no torture chambers anywhere. They said for days they were searching for the secret underground place to find it. There was never any secret. All the lies. So what they did after about a week or so, not reporting that Israel is dropping 300 bombs a day, destroying the entire Syrian Navy, they're destroying the Syrian harbor. They're not saying nothing about that. America is dropping 125 to 300 bombs a day, claim they bombing ISIS. Why weren't they bombing ISIS the week before?
Right.
But they're saying, okay, we're going to make it impossible for Assad to govern, which they did for the last 20, 30 years. He hung in there as long as he could. But Israel, while they were bombing Lebanon, but bombing Syria at the same time, and nobody was putting it in the press. So now they got no real story. Now the so-called rebels will look like his beard and hair look like he just stepped out of the beauty parlor. and he's wearing a uniform, a military uniform, which is the same military uniform of the Israeli Defense Force. I'm like, this shit is not to be believed. They ain't trying to hide nothing because we too dumb to see what's there.
That's the part that pisses me off, though. And that's the thing that pisses me off.
No, it gets worse. So when they can't find no underground torture chambers, they can't find no above ground torture chambers, They can't find anybody in any of the prison. The CNN reporter and one guy with a rifle supposedly unlock a locked cell and go in the room, and she's going like, "There's a blanket. Is there anybody under that blanket?" Nice, clean, crisp black blankets, the only thing in the cell. Then the guard goes there and lifts it. Some guy jumping with his hands up, and then he says, "Oh, he had been in prison." She runs the story. This guy was arrested 2 months ago for yada 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 yada. But the world, just like me and my wife said, "No, this is too phony." The world said it was too phony. So 4 or 5 days later, CNN came out and said, "We have to apologize. This guy turned out to be, he was lying. He was not, he was an Air Force intelligence officer." And I'm saying, this shit is not to be, but we can't find him now to interview him. Give me a break. You couldn't find a real story, so you made up one about some dude who was left locked in a cell while everybody else ran away. That is so pathetically sad. But those are the things that are passing off as news stations, all owned by the same Zionists, whose master plan is to control Syria, Lebanon, Egypt. They're coming into Egypt next. Because this punk they got as the president there, that's their man. You know, that's their man. Once they killed Anwar Sadat, America was in control of Egypt, along with the Zionists. But they're going to see that the Egyptian people is not going to take it lying down. So they got to come up with a real slick trick to make that one work. Now they're attacking Yemen every day. They figured to neutralize Lebanon.
Yep. Yeah, my Babalu was talking about that. He brought that up when I had him on a couple while ago.
And so, but we just have to study history. How many millions African live in Haiti? I mean, in I just mentioned the place in the south, Yemen.
Oh, Yemen.
Do you know that millions and millions of Africans live in Yemen?
I did not.
Oh, y'all got to study history.
Did not.
History erased the mystery.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yemen used to be Ethiopia or Aksum.
Wow.
Read any of the historians, Pliny the Younger. These are ancient Roman historians. All of them will tell you when they describe the people of outer Saudi Arabia, all of them describe them as Black, Ethiopian, Nubian people. Okay. Wow. Every one of the Roman historians, every one of the Greek historians. You know? So we have to deal with what we're dealing with. This beast that came out of the Caucasus Mountains. The beast of the Caucasus Mountain. Dr. Ben used to talk to us about that. He said they came out of the Caucasus Mountain, and I forgot what river he called it. He called it the Oxus River. And I went searching for this Oxus River where you can't find the Oxus River because they renamed the Oxus River with an Arabic name. But you got to go back to realize that this Arab name used to be the Oxus River that Dr. Ben was talking about, right? Where these white folks first emanated from. Now, we know their last major emanation during the Roman time. We know them as the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. They become the people we know as the Germans. And they end up going all the way down to France and down to Spain and invade North Africa after the Romans and before the Arabs had stayed there for nearly 200 years, raping and plundering our people in North Africa before they're pushed out by the Black folks who are erroneously called the Moors. And those Black folks was working with their Arab partners called the Umayyads, who had been driven out of the Middle East by the cracker, a Muslim called the Abbas, who were the Turks and the Kurds, who took over the Islamic system from the group who had developed it under Muhammad. And so that group ran to North Africa for safety, and they merged with the Black folks there. And that's the group that's called the Moors. They're the ones that invade Spain. History will erase the mystery. You got to study history, get this stuff right.
Yeah, that's facts.
And then you're going to see that when we play other people's game, we better make sure we know the history of the game we're playing.
Yeah.
Prophet Muhammad dies. Abu Bakr, his partner, takes over. He's an old man. He doesn't live long. And then the prophet's, one of his main allies, a brother called Ali, takes over. He's assassinated while he's on the throne. And then the dude who helped assassinate him, not Muawiyah, what's the other one? Muawiyah's cousin, takes over. And then he's killed by Muhammad's other cousin, Ali. Umar is what I'm sorry, that died right after Abu Bakr. Now, Ali would have to kill this other dude whose cousin is the general of the Northern Army. But since Ali grew up with the cousin, Ali thought the cousin was going to go along with him. And his name is Muawiyah. But he brought his army down and he eventually murders Ali. Then sets out to murder all the grandchildren of the Prophet Muhammad. Then the people they call the Shia came in and rescued the Prophet's family and take them to Iran. So if we want to talk about the real Muslim, we need to talk about the Shia Muslim and not the Sunni Muslim.
Wow. That's deep.
History will erase the mystery, will erase the hell out of the mystery.
Yeah, we having a hell of a history master's class out here tonight, man, for real.
Oh, I'm like the young kids go, like, I'm just saying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
I'm just saying. And I just wanted to get this foundational stuff down because we be acting like some stuff is real that ain't real.
Right, right.
Okay.
That's real. I tell you what is real, and this is something we spoke about the other day too, which I feel like I would love to get your thoughts and have you, kind of dive into it. But Dr. Wade Noble's book, The Island of Memes, I got it sitting here in front of me. And chapter 1, he speaks about the Black psychology of dehumanization. How significant is that alone with what we're dealing with?
Oh, no. Yeah, that's this book right here.
Yeah, you got yours too. Look, so I said, man, listen, I got to get him on here too in due time for sure.
Right.
But it's a deep piece though. Very powerful.
But Dr. Nobles, he talks about these concepts called memes. Right. And what he's meaning by memes is the cultural ideas, concepts, and principles that makes up your consciousness. Where did you get these memes from?
Yep.
Whose culture is interpreting your reality? Right? Whose concepts of reality is motivating your actions? And what he's trying to say is that the psychological damage to our consciousness is greater than the physical damage. And he's absolutely right. And that psychological control or the psychological slavery is still as intact today as it was 100 years ago. And it is wreaking more damage today than it ever has. That's why somebody can still say, I was in America before Columbus, and then under Reinterpret say the slave trade never happened. All that was a myth and made up. Somebody have asked me, where's the ships? God, have mercy on the cowards who are afraid to fight for freedom. And the people who are having these discussions, they don't belong to any political organization. They're not trying to secure and make safe the Black community anywhere in America or in the world. They're not controlling land, labor, and resources to create any kind of government of their own. They think they got some special partners like some of the other brothers, I won't even call their name, talking about this treaty and that treaty, like they got some special partnership with white people that the rest of the Black people don't have. But anyway, let's get to your agenda. Let's get to the agenda that you had today.
Look, we here now. I mean, we on par. We on pace. Because it's definitely a lot. It's a lot that needs to be talked about. But and you're sharing, man. You're sharing stories and knowledge and wisdom that I've never heard of. And mind you, I take pride in being a researcher and a studier. Someone who does study our culture and our history.
Yeah, it's just like us who call ourselves Yoruba. That's a lie, right? Almost half of the Yoruba people don't live in Nigeria because Nigeria wasn't there. 60 years ago? When it didn't exist.
Wow.
Right? So those boundaries didn't exist.
So where did that concept come from, Baba?
Then that's after the Berlin Conference.
Gotcha.
And but in 1885, when all the European crackers got together after they'd sent their missionaries down and they'd carried on the so-called transatlantic slave trade, and they'd send all their missionaries down to Africa to study and see where are the good farmland, where are the mineral resources. You know, so most of the people we call missionaries, they were really scientists, botanists, and others trying to find out what is the gold there, what kind of mineral is there. And that goes all the way back to Dr. Livingston. That's what he was doing. He studied Livingston, and what he was doing was sending reports back to Europe, telling them where the mineral resources was in the Congo. Right? He eventually kind of got caught up in the humanity of the people there and stopped doing it. They couldn't hear from him or find him. Then they hired this cracker from New York, this news reporter, right? What is called Stanley, who they taught us when I was a child was some big hero. That he goes to the Congo and he finds Livingston, and they get the statement, Dr. Livingston, I presume. They don't tell you how many people Stanley slaughtered, black people, getting to Livingston. They don't tell you who financed Stanley, and they don't tell you that King Leopold of Belgium hired Stanley after that to go back and survey the Congo. After Leopold decided he's going to take it over, Stanley began the process of genocide in the Congo on behalf of King Leopold. And yet they passed Stanley off as some hero.
Wow.
This cat is worse than Adolf Hitler on black people.
Wow.
Study the history. It will erase their mystery.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so we get this whole piece. And then comes the Berlin Conference, where all the Europeans sat to the table. The Americans was there too, and financing much of it also. And they decided how they were going to cut Africa up into pieces. And each of them going to take a piece.
Yep.
And because they gave the German who called the conference gets the short end of the stick, that's what starts the First World War.
Wow.
You see what you're talking about, Small? Germany ended up with Tanzania, Namibia, but they didn't find the wealth of Namibia right up front, because Namibia is mostly desert. It's right on the ocean. Though Tanzania is one of the biggest gold producers in Africa, they hadn't found the gold yet. The Germans were a little pissed off. I think the Germans also had Cameroon. Was it Cameroon? Cameroon, I think. Or Togo, one of those areas. Maybe Togo. So the Germans was pissed. So look, y'all got to redistribute some of the wealth. The French and the British, y'all got the best of everything. And when they said no, the Germans said, okay, then I'm going to take the shit you got in Europe then. I'm going to take Alsace-Lorraine, that's a part of France, which was the main coal field of Europe. I'm going to take Poland, which was the main timber field of Europe. And I'm going to take the Rhineland, which is the breadbasket of Europe. Since y'all cut me out in Africa, I'm going to take that's what led to the First World War.
Wow.
Not sharing Africa properly between the thieves. Right? Study it. You think Small crazy? Study the shit. You're going to say, oh shit. Yeah. That Duke of Austria getting shot, they had nothing to do with nothing. Except the lie they used. The shot heard around the world. No. The shot heard around the world was Germany saying, y'all shaft us, we're going to take Europe from you.
Wow.
Okay? And then you came back and you beat them up and you get Europe back from them and you locked them in a cage. And Hitler came back and did the same thing. He took the same land that was taken in the First World War for the same reason. First, he tried to take Africa. That's the whole Rommel North African tank force thing, you know. And when they lost North Africa, because the British and the Americans outflanked them in the desert with the Arabs working for them, then they said, the hell with it. We'll just take the rest of Europe then. The mistake Hitler made was to take on Russia. Had he left that alone, we'd all be saying, "Sit high," or what's the thing called? Something high today, thick high. But he messed around and he sent Paulson, General Paulson, his big boy, into Russia. He should have sent Rommel. Rommel would have won that battle because it would have been fought differently. But they were afraid of Rommel because Rommel was too independent of the ruling elite in the Nazi party. So they sent Paulson, and he got his ass whipped by the Russians. And then they got caught, stuck down, and then the Russian winter took care of the rest. But that's another story.
Yeah.
History is a beautiful thing. We need to study it. You know, study everybody's history because it'll give you a good insight on your history.
That's
right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
And so we come back to Nigeria and the Yoruba, because I don't want you to be saying, "Oh, shoot, I'm small, it's taking my religion away from me. And I can't go like, Ashe no more and shit."
Nah, listen, man.
Well, the thing we got to be clear on, there's no Yoruba religion. There's a Yoruba ethnic nation, an ethnic group of people.
Right.
Who happen to practice a form of African sacred science that we have adopted in terms of their methodology. But there's no such thing as a Yoruba religion. We practice African sacred science, use the Yoruba ethnic group methodology. And if you go to genealogy, the Yoruba, the Akan, the Ewe, and the Ga, and the Fan is the same ethnic genetic cluster. The only difference between them is the cultural phenomena that they've developed being separate in certain regions. The Yoruba, the Fan, the Ga, the Ewe, and the Akans are the same people 99% genetically.
Wow.
Chew on that card.
Yeah.
So we get to talk about my little African religion is better than your little African religion.
They are the same system of science, though, man.
It's all to explain cosmology and ecology to ourselves.
Yeah.
It's all the same. It's just different tools in different environments, developed at different times in history to explain reality to ourselves, the reality of cosmology, the reality of ecology to ourselves.
Yeah.
And to explain ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah.
And what our relationship is to cosmology and ecology.
Yeah, because that's where I started studying was, the Nile Valley. That's where I really got exposed to, you know what I mean?
Same thing, different name, different location, different time in history, different amount of information to work with, a different understanding.
Yep.
Same thing.
Yes, sir.
I just want to get that space so people don't be going like, I'm Akan and I'm Nana Sada da. Okay.
Right.
And I'm working with the Buffoon. And I'm with daddy this and mama this. You're just an African trying to find your way out of the darkness towards some light. And this is the methodology and the tools you've adopted based on some developmental processes that our ancestors went through to try to give us these set of tools to help us find harmony and balance.
Yes, sir.
And Kemet, we call it Ma'at. And the Igbo, we call it Omanele. And the Yoruba, we call it Iwapele. All means the same thing, harmony and balance within and without, and understanding thereof. Sure. So history will erase the mystery, because when you study history, it'll lead you to all these same places that it led me to.
Yep, that's facts.
I could Ashe better than the best Ashes. I've been fooling around in the Ashe business since 1967. That's a long time.
Listen.
I could Salam Alaikum better than anybody. I've been fooling around in that since 63.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And what you learn is that what the old brothers say on the corner in any city we go to, everything is everything.
Yeah.
Everything's everything.
Big facts. Baba, we got a question from the tribe in the comments. One of the brothers put a question that says, what is the main organization for the Diasporan investment for, I think that's supposed to be reparations and development, or repatriation and development in the motherland? Are you familiar with that, Baba?
Yeah. What is the main organization for the Diasporan investment, repatriation, and development in the motherland? There's no main organization. There's a bunch of different organizations trying to do it. It'd be good if the African Union had become that main organization. To some degree, the African Union is trying to be that, but there's multiple organizations coming from the Caribbean, coming from the Blacks in Europe, coming from the Blacks here in America. And I know there have been a number of attempts in the last couple of years to call for a Pan-African conference, so some of these things can be discussed and some better unity could be created to facilitate getting this work done more productively and faster. But there is no main organization that's really doing it, except the African Union is the closest thing to a main organization. And they got all of their contradictions, you know. So in every country, you find some group doing some. Tanzania, you got one group. In Ghana, you got another. In Benin, you may have another. And in Kenya, you got another. But the main force is people right now in the UNIA who's trying to organize and base themselves in Liberia. You've got groups of Hebrew Israelites, some are based in Liberia, some are based in Ghana. And then you have the Afro-American Association in Ghana, which is probably one of the biggest organizations in Ghana of repatriated people. That would be the closest or the largest I know on the continent that's dealing in this area, the Afro-American Association of Ghana.
That's it. That's what's up. Yeah. Matter of fact, Baba, shout out to Baba Ogun Tolu. He just got his citizenship.
Yeah. I went over to file my papers, but somebody ticked me off while I'm sitting in the office, and I didn't have time to deal with foolish people. And I had to go to a friend's mother's funeral. I go like, you know what? I do have a country.
Yeah.
I built it. And I was there before the white man got there.
Yeah.
And I built it after he got here.
Yeah.
So I don't really need another citizenship, but it would be cool.
Yeah.
Because if I had Ghana citizenship, I can travel to most of the rest of Africa without a visa.
Exactly. Yep.
Just rent a car and go across the border. You know, right now you got to go through the hassle of visa and money at every border.
Yep.
The stupid American passport, except for Zambia. Zambia is the only country in Africa I know where you don't need a visa if you're an American. But I think it is an advantage. But I think most of the people who got it, I don't think deserve it or earned it. In the sense, I think all Africans deserve to have citizenship in every and any African country. But in the context of the modernity on which we are dealing, the people who should have been given citizenship first are all of those who have repatriated to Ghana and been living there and working and doing business for years. And you're talking of thousands and thousands of people.
Yeah, including you.
A lot of the people who got the citizenship the other day don't live there, don't own any business there. To them, it's just a novelty. Most of them will never really go back to Africa. They will never invest in Africa. They will never, and I hate to sound negative on that point, but I'm only talking about the history after traveling back and forth and doing business there. I own a business there for 20-something years. Been traveling and doing business there for 40-something years. And I've seen the comings and the goings.
Yeah.
Citizenship in an African country should not be a novelty. It should be a tool for investment and helping with the development and the repatriation of capital, to help in the development of the continent.
Yep.
And at best, if you're not going to open business, build a second home. Your children and grandchildren.
Yep.
You get too hot in this little place up here and you need to take a break. You got someplace to take a break too.
Yeah. and they're trying to put like some systems in place to kind of keep people from doing that, because we got a team over there that lives in Ghana, but they've been helping us who live here in the States to kind of set up shop and organization. But the thing about it is they're trying to eliminate the people who are doing that. So the way they set it up now, you can't just go over there, apply and get it right then. They're going to make you wait you got to get an appointment, and then they're not going to tell you exactly when the appointment's going to be because they want to make sure that you're there. You ain't trying to just come and get it and then bounce back to the States or wherever you're trying to go.
And you and I both know that most of those people in that 540, that's exactly what they did.
Yes, sir.
They came in and got it and bounced back and get something to brag about and to show up.
Yep.
But they're not a part of any organization that's trying to build and repatriate and develop and invest.
Exactly.
I have a multi-million-dollar business in Ghana, make no money off of it, but the people in Ghana, I allow money to be made off of it for them. I like this. We were never able to get the capital to build it into what we wanted it to be, the kind of institution, and that's still possible. But at my age now, I don't know how much longer I can maintain it. We've had it for 20 years. It's a 30-room hotel, conference center, with its own swimming pool, full kitchen, restaurant, cocktail lounge, cocktail bar, by the pool, our own parking facility, right 1 block off of the ocean and walking distance of the slave dungeon.
Which one? Almina?
And no, Cape Coast. We're in the suburb of Cape Coast called Ola, right on the road that runs by the ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, we're right up on the hill before you get to the clusters of all those schools. When you're going in before you cross the bridge to the lagoon. Yeah.
I got you. Yeah, I went to Almina when I was over there in March. Yeah, it was something. I'll tell you that.
It is, and we should always be stimulated to remember the Holocaust, the genocide that happened to the ancestors. We never want our children to forget. We want to put it in our DNA as a part of DNA memory. So that every generation could remember why we've got to be vigilant with our enemies. But let's get back to the history piece.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm proud of all the people who want the citizenship. I don't want people to feel a put down or anything.
Right.
But I'm saying there's a responsibility that comes with having that citizenship.
Yes.
And that responsibility should come with investing, with developing, with bringing your skills and bringing your capital to help develop Africa.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Pouring into the African.
Those of us in the Western Hemisphere, in the Caribbean, United States, and Canada, we've had access to some of the best education and technical training in the world. Let's take it home.
Yes, sir.
As much of it as we can. Let's help our children go back home. The land, there's so much land in Africa, Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
To develop farms.
And beautiful too.
Yes, to develop farms, to develop and grow our natural food, to raise animals, but naturally, holistically. We've got the space to do it. Opportunities we will never have in this country.
Yeah.
Because of all of the corruption and the fraud that exists here.
Yeah.
Let's feed into the African banking system and help them break away from Europe dependency.
Yes, sir.
And American dependencies.
Yes, sir.
If we're willing to do all those things, give out all the citizenship you got. You know, let's help Africa break down the borders so that you don't need any passport to cross any border in Africa or any visa. But we've got to get involved. We've got to study the history of the continent. What's going on in the continent? What's going on? How many of us know that the young government, led by that young brother in Burkina Faso, the youngest president in the world, has just paid off their national debt?
Wow. Yeah, one of the tribe was speaking about that. And Baba Dada, Mukasa Dada was going ham on that too. He definitely spoke about that.
You know, just paid off.
We'll never hear about none of that though, Baba. We'll never hear about that here in the States. Never.
Right. So they've been held in debt slavery for decades by the French while they're being robbed of everything that was in their country. They kicked the Canadian Gold Company out of their country. They manufacture their own gold, store their own gold. They open a tomato plant because tomato is a big crop in the country that was able to employ thousands of people in the whole agro process. You know, they had one of the best agricultural years in the history of Burkina Faso this year. And they're going to see 3 to 4 crops a year because of the weather. You know, the government has given the farmers thousands of farm equipment, thousands of tractors, that's solar powered, which will allow them to work around the clock if they want to.
Wow.
This is the gift the government gave to their farmers as an incentive to produce the food for the population so they don't have to import food from the European countries and American countries.
Yeah, they're poisoning with toxins and all kind of other foolishness.
So with their natural minerals in their hands now, with their agriculture under their control now, they can build the urban infrastructure that they need to build to survive.
Gotcha. I got excuse me, a couple more questions in the comments, but one of them, I think the name of your hotel is Sanaa Lodge, right? Is it
Yes,
Sanaa Lodge?
Sanaa, Sanaa Lodge.
Okay.
And the word itself means the place of wealth. But the esoteric meaning is the place from which you do not depart until the task is complete.
Gotcha.
Which then puts me in trouble because I can't give it up. You know, I have to stay and fight until I find a group of young brothers and sisters who really want to try to make something of the thing.
I'll tell you what, we have to talk off air, but I'm definitely down for the cause, man. I'm ready to get it in. So
yeah, because at 79, how much more time I'm gonna have to hang around here doing anything, jumping on a plane, flying anywhere? You say, oh, don't say that. No, that's the reality.
Yeah.
And we got to be real.
One thing about life, none of us getting out alive, man.
Nope. Nobody. And time will sit you down after a while. So you had enough time to get that done. You didn't. I'm sorry. Your knees gonna fail. Your little heart's gonna fail. You know, I don't care how much the doctor say these steps you're taking. At the end of the day, you will make an exit. The thing is, stay as healthy as you can for as long as you can before the exit time.
And do as much work as you can.
Make an easy exit.
Yes,
but
sir.
You run out of time, and you want to pass the scepter to the next generation.
Yes, sir.
So that you young people can see yourself in tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
You can do anything in the world.
Yes, sir.
You know,
facts.
And a lot of this is in your hands to do.
Yes, sir. I got one more, Baba. Brother Jamal said, can you please speak about and expand on the spirit of Babalu and how it's identified in other systems or sacred sciences? So I'm thinking he might be asking, like, what would be like?
Can you speak about expanding the spirit of Babalu and how it is identified in other systems? Why you want to give me all that work to do? I know brothers like to ask these nice esoteric questions, which they already have their answers to. But Brother Jamal, that's a good question. I can just do a surface, you know, Babalu, who we call in Trinidad Shakpana, is supposed to be the erasure of communicable diseases, but it really means they would say something the erasure of smallpox. But in most communicable diseases, you're talking about methods by which diseases get spread. The priesthood of Babalu has to do with how to prevent, what are the things we do to prevent the spreading of diseases, as well as the understanding spiritually. When someone's got smallpox, you get all the little pimples. You get measles, get all the little pimples. You get, what's that other one called? But you get these pimples. What it's doing is the body trying to excise itself of the disease. All right. We think that's the problem. We scratch it and break it, but that's not the problem. That's the body saying, there's a poison at work inside of me. I got to get that poison out of me. Part of the Babalu piece it's got its own dance, its own dress, its own colors, and all of these things. But those are just rituals to mentally get you prepared to understand what this is all about.
Yes.
And part of it is, how do you exercise your consciousness of the poison? You know, how do you cleanse yourself of the internal poison that comes from the ignorance and false information? But at the same time, how do you learn the herbal science that must be studied and learned, and the medicine that we derive from that to help deal with these different diseases? So we learned to deal with smallpox and yellow fever and all of these things, and we were vaccinating ourselves before white folks ever heard of any vaccination, by using, like, for instance, with the what's the one? Was that the smallpox? Where we used the pus from the cow. Okay. But you had to break the skin in order to get the pus into your blood system, so that set of bacteria could counteract the other set of bacteria.
Wow.
So, Babalu is about medicine.
Yeah. Healing.
It's about medicine. It's about how herbs are used. It's about identifying, especially the communicable diseases in the community, and finding cures for it.
Yes. I should.
I went through a ritual once where I had to die a little longer than I was supposed to. Because I think they said 15 minutes. That's a long time to be in what they call the death state. But the medicine that brought me back was put together by the priest and priestess of the Babalu. Okay. And they created the medicine 2 weeks before I went into that state, because they already knew through divination that was going to happen to me. And so they had time to prepare the medicine, necessary to bring me back, because I did leave. So a lot about what Babalu is about, it we don't put emphasis on. We put more emphasis on fearing people. And it's ironic because I'm sitting here and I didn't realize this book is just sitting right there on the top.
Wow. So, after I got that one, I might have that one too. Listen, Baba, that's one of the most powerful deities. Like all the initiations I've ever been.
It is about. It's not just about, people try to focus that it's just about the disease and make people scary. No, it's about finding the cures for these diseases. It is a research, medical, herbal school of thought. Those priests, they have to master a lot of the healing arts, but a lot of the research art in finding the cures. Because we have other deities who is the herbal deities, but their job is to identify the herbs and to preserve them and protect them. But Babalu's job is to find out how those herbs are going to be used to heal. I mean, we would call the priests of Babalu today, because we didn't use the term priest back then, so let's deal with that whole thing. We call them ourselves priests, but they weren't called priests. These were scientists. These were physicians. So most of the people who would be under Babalu would be considered physicians today and research scientists today, because of the body of knowledge we have to gather in order to assist those kinds of things that would cause that kind of health trauma in the population. But the whole thing we are calling religion is really sacred science. That was the science of that community. That was the developmental science and the developmental understanding of science in that community. And so the mistake we are making is to mimic yesterday without growing it into today. Like you could put boundaries on knowledge. So the knowledge that was derived 1,000 years ago that we're mimicking in our so-called priesthood and our initiations, we act like that's the limit. No, that should be the genesis. And we move on from there to expand the body of knowledge and to create the science. But we've been caught up in white people concept of religions, which have restricted us to some time in yesterday that we're supposed to just repeat, and regurgitate. That's not what what we call Yoruba or Ifa or Orisha should be about. Whether we call it, what do they call it in Brazil? Candomblé. We call it in Puerto Rico, Santeria. We call it in Cuba, Lucomi. We all talking about the same thing. It's just some of us have a greater piece of it than the other. But we're talking about the sacred science of Africa, mostly as practiced by the Yorubas, who were the last big layer of Africans to be enslaved in the Western Hemisphere. So their culture is more remembered and more intact than the ones who came before them, the Congolese and the Angolans and the Akans, even though fragments of all of theirs make up a part of what we're calling Yoruba. but it's African sacred science.
Yes, sir.
African sacred science. Every one of these, Babalu, that's a scientist. Yemajao Lokun, that's about science. Yemajao is the body of water that sunlight penetrates, that photosynthesis takes place. Or Lokun is the body, part of the water that photosynthesis don't take place. What is the science there? What is the science there that produces life? What is the science in that maintains life? Ishur Ligba, this is about psychology here, you know.
Yes,
this is psychology and sociology. Of Romulus and the erasure of divination. Again, we're talking psychology, we're talking metaphysics, we're talking about astrology, you know, Othanian, Lord of the Plants.
Yep.
We're talking about the study of botany, we're talking about the study of, what's the study of when you're studying plants?
Herbs.
Yeah.
Really nothing.
You know, the chief, we're talking about philosophy here, you know. The philosophy of life, the philosophy of the beginning of life, you know. So we're talking about Oya, the spirit and the wind. We're talking about Oya, we're talking about change in the human character, change in nature, change in process, the process of change that nature goes through to transform. What are the process of change that the human go through to transform? The same, we talk about Ogun, we talk about transformation after the process of change. Transformation must come. How do you get transformation without change? You can't get transformation without change. So that means Oya must be married to Ogun, transformation which comes as a result of change, both in nature and in the human character, you know. And so these things is when we study our literature, remember, we don't stop and say, these are the boundaries, you only do, no. The knowledge that we derive from the ancestors is the genesis. We take the baton from there with that body of knowledge intact and go forward. Not just sit by doing ritualistic repetition, and nothing changes in your environment. That's what the Christians do. That's what the Muslims do. You pray 5 times a day and then you go back to being slaves.
Yep.
You go hoop and holler and shout on Sunday all day long and go back to being slaves.
Yep.
Nothing changed, and yet you don't change.
That's real.
But that's where Ogun represents such a phenomenon, because Ogun, they said the god of iron, the god of war, and all of this stuff. But why is iron used there? Because it's you take iron, you find a rock, it's full of impurities, full of other minerals that you can't use for much things right there. So you put it in the fire, and you burn it. And you burn out the impurities, and you get something called steel. But with steel, I can make a spear. With the steel, I can make a hoe to work the garden. With steel, I can make a cutlass to cut the weed. With steel, I can make a sword. With steel, I can make strong elements and poles to be the frame of my house. So, to show that the need to use nature in a transformative process to come up with utility. See, same thing with the human character. The human character must be transformed in order to be utilized for the better. You know, when they talk about issue Ligba at the crossroads, what is the crossroads? It's that point in the human mind, the human consciousness, where you must make a decision, you must make a choice. Otherwise, you're going to be frustrated. You know, otherwise you're going to retard the whole process of your movement. You've got to make a choice. Issue leg is that stimulus in your consciousness that bring you to make that choice. But it's deeper than this. It's like this necklace we wear, these beads we wear.
Yeah.
When the white man said, you can't practice none of this stuff here you brought from Africa. And if I catch you practicing, you're going to lose your hand, or you lose your life, or something, lose your freedom at best. So we said, what kind of secret way could we come up with to maintain the body of knowledge and the practice without them realizing we're doing it? The beads.
Yeah.
Each one symbolizes a school of thought. He would buy us the beads because they like beads. They love you. We go to the market and buy the Negroes some beads.
Oh man!
But we use the beads to create a code system of an African university that is stored in our minds and stimulated by the memories that the code system of beads and colors evokes. And then, of course, the rituals and other things we could do in secret when we had the opportunity. And so thus we preserved our understanding of cosmology and ecology, you know, and its relationship to us and the environment we found ourselves in. But one of the mistakes we've made is to operate from the perspective of white man religion conceptually, and thus put boundaries and restrictions on ourselves so we don't grow past the point our ancestors handed us the scepter. We just stood there. They didn't hand us the scepter to stand on the track in one place and just look back at what run they made. They hand us the scepter to study the run they made and now make us our own run. And we haven't been doing that.
That's real. That's real. Yeah. And speaking of Babalu, that's definitely one of the most powerful. That is the most powerful initiation I've ever been a part of. Like it was different.
Babalu,
yeah, we got one in our house.
That's a serious school of thought.
Yeah.
And we know, the brother asked the question, and I'm sure he probably know too. A lot of this tradition is like Freemasonry. It's a secret society.
Yeah.
And we who take the oath of being priests, we do not share this information except to those who have agreed to be a part of this process and to protect its integrity. I remember when I was brought out of the bush, and after I'd been bathed and cleaned up, after having been on the ground for a week, and I was brought into the main shrine. And I remember when the blindfolds was taken off of me, all those beautiful orchids and beautiful plants that came from like all over the Caribbean, and all of the shrines of some like, I think they were serving nearly 50, 60 different orishas in this shrine. And I had to go and make an oath to each one. And a part of that oath was there's certain things I would say and certain things I cannot say, except to those who agreed to what I've agreed to carry this institution forward.
Wow.
And that's for the elders who might say, Small, you're saying a little bit too much out there sometimes because we be hearing you. No, I've learned the boundaries. Sometimes I may cross them a little bit, but I've learned the boundaries. And I took an oath. And the other part of that oath was that we died for this race.
Sure.
We took an oath to that we will die for this race.
Oh, yeah. It's real. A lot of people, nowadays, because it's growing
It's
popular.
not just a ceremonial game for you to wear some beads and wrap your hair and wear some clothes and go and do some dancing. No. Your primary responsibility is freedom or death. The ancestors are simply giving you the tool to accomplish that. And our job is to perfect the tool and advance the tool.
That's facts. Yeah, no, that's powerful. And I appreciate that, Baba, because as long as I've been studying and following your work before I ever had the opportunity to meet you, I've never heard you share or open up in regards to your path in the tradition the way you have on. I give thanks for that because that's powerful, extremely powerful.
Because a lot of people don't really know that I'm a real priest.
Right.
I think that I've been to the ground and that I've had multiple beautiful teachers. My main Baba Matushu, who's now an ancestor, Mother Joan, who's an ancestor, Mother Valerie, both from Trinidad, who are an ancestor, Mother Pat, who is now an ancestor from the Kenny Cyrus Ilea Jube in Chaguanas Enterprise Village, Trinidad. Baba Surgiman from the Yoruba village in South Carolina. Baba Jomo from that same village. Shifo Jamu from these people I know. Mama KK, who I met back in '67.
Yeah.
When they had the Yoruba temple on 7th Avenue in Harlem.
Yeah. My godmother was part of that temple.
Wow.
She was married to the Oba. She was married to the Oba.
When they lost the temple, I was then an imam while studying in Yoruba.
Wow.
Right? Because Baba Surgiman was one of Malcolm X's greatest supporters.
Yes.
So I've become the imam of Malcolm X Muslim Mosque Inc., MMI.
Wow.
And so when they lost their temple, I let them meet in the mosque on Sunday to have Yoruba temple. A lot of the other Muslim communities got very angry at me and even put a contract on me. Didn't work. But the Juju backed it down. They didn't understand. The other person who was a big supporter of Malcolm was Nana Perry Denny Zulu. I also studied under them in the Akan tradition. And my close friend was his son, Kimati Denny Zulu, who was a very powerful priest of the Akan. He's an ancestor now. Sometimes we used to go in the shrine on Friday, work in the shrine, and not surface until Monday, you know, doing work. I mean, people would come leave our food at the door, you know, and water and drinks at the door. I've been through a lot in trying to learn this tradition, trying to look at the faults we have bred into it and trying to look at the authenticity. I've been to Africa. I can't tell you the number of shrines I visited in Africa and the number of priests and priestesses I've interviewed in Africa.
That's true.
And those who helped to train me from Africa. You know, and so, so I'm not just a political. I didn't get my identity from City College and the degree. You know, the degree I got from those crazy white people up there. Right?
Oh, I got out the mud, man.
My degree come from the Black community and from being in the Black struggle every day. I knew Queen Mother Moore. You know, I didn't just stay on the street and wave. I worked with her. We stood in the same room together. I served her food, her tea, seeing Malcolm X sisters and Mary Kochiyama and others who you only know from history. I knew them intimately and sat at their feet.
Wow.
I sat at the feet of John Henry Clark and Dr. Ben. I stood in Dr. Ben's house and cry in his arms, and he cried in my arms.
Wow.
I painted Dr. Clark's bathroom and put up ceilings, sheetrock ceilings where he had leaks in his house. And, you know, I was blessed.
Yes.
In ways that most was not blessed. Leonard Jeffries, that brilliant, absolute mind of political economic thinker. We were friends for 60 plus years, still are. You know, I had a chance to work with Dr. Wade Nobles and Baba J. Carruthers and Baba Milana Karanga. And I can get on the phone call right now, Baba Karanga. If he ain't speaking to nobody else in the world, he will have his wife or somebody bring him that phone because we like that as brothers.
Wow. That's true.
You know? I worked with Dr. Hilliard and Dr. Nobles, counseling and doing workshop for the St. Louis, the Kansas City Black School District for a number of years. So I come out of that precipice. I worked with the Black Panther Party. I knew Matula Shakur. I knew Zaid Shakur, my best friend, and who was the head of the Black Panther Party in the Bronx office. His brother Lamumba Shakur ran the Black Panther Party in the Harlem office. I was a part of all of that.
Wow.
And I've been blessed that I lived through all of that. So when you hear me, you hearing them. I speak for them.
Yes, sir.
You know, I don't have no master's degree, no the PhDs. My PhDs are all honorary PhDs. I only got a bachelor's degree because they wanted to get my behind off the campus. So they changed up my record of pass me, get him out of here, right? When I was a student, you know. My degree comes from the streets and the struggle.
Yeah.
I marched with Dr. King and them against the war in the march against the war when he marched on the UN with Kwame Ture. I knew Kwame Ture like a close brother, closer than I know you. We just got to know, but Kwame and I was like brothers and friends. I laid in his sick bed because he was too weak to get up, and I laid in bed beside him the month before he died.
Wow.
And we just to talk, but what do I tell the young people about prostate cancer? What is it you didn't do that we should tell the others they should do?
Yes.
And I remember the one thing he told me, said, James, said, a mistake I made, I didn't do nothing.
Wow.
I kept it a secret. I thought it was just a man thing until it was too late. I remember when we first found out he had the cancer, and we went to the hospital, me and his ex-girlfriend, who was this lady during the early days in Snake. And we walked into the hospital. He was with his sister and a couple of his kids. He started booing like a little baby. James, don't die, don't die. Negro, you ain't died. He's just sick, right? Well, I mean, he was a beautiful soldier, but he also was a vulnerable man, one of our brothers, our comrades, who I love to death. But I'm just saying all this to let you know that I grew up with these people in this struggle. And when I speak, I try my best to speak for them who are not here anymore. Dave Secor got killed on that turnpike. That day they arrested his wife, Asada. But thank God Asada was able to be extracted by brothers like Sekou Odinga, who led the extraction and sent her to Cuba. So they can rest in peace. You know, Lumumba was tricked and assassinated in New Orleans. We never found out who did that. You know, Matula was held in prison until he was about to die, and then he was sent home to die. You know, and so many of the other great soldiers who fought. These were kids. These were 19, 18-year-old soldiers when they went to prison on our behalf. And so those were the people I knew. Those were the people I soldiered with, ran with. So when you hear me talking, I'm really talking about them. Things they were fighting for, things we were as youngsters arguing about, what was right and wrong. Was it Islam? Was it Yoruba? Was it Christian? What was going to be the path spiritually we were going to take? Things like this is what we, you know what I'm saying? I'm just blessed that I lived to be almost 80 years old when most of my beautiful brothers and sisters didn't live to be 40, you know. Or 60. And so, but all that means is it's y'all's time.
Yeah.
It's y'all's time.
We here now.
Take the scepter from people like me and Dr. Banner, Dr. Collins. Y'all got to just do what you got to do. And remember what the ancestors taught us, and this is clear. We are the ancestors. My mom and daddy got in bed and they had sex. And that egg and that sperm carried all of the ancestors of my father. And the egg carried all the ancestors of my mother, and they unite to give me all of the ancestors of my mother and all the ancestors of my father. They became me. I am them. I am the ancestors today. My children are the same ancestors today and tomorrow. Okay. My ancestors, my mother, my father, they were me yesterday. I am them today. That's my culture. That's my sacred science understanding of fundamental genetic reality. You know, not no boogeyman spookism, nothing. We don't need boogeyman spookism. We don't need to lie about our history. Our history is so magnanimous, so great. We can tell the worst part of our history and is greater than most people in the world's history.
That's facts.
Because we all got to have the human experience, and our ancestors was conscious of that.
Yes, sir.
And tried to build societies that reflected that. So here we are.
We're here now.
Just cruising. And like smoking, I'm saying, cruising down a crowded avenue. Having fun, you know.
Man, listen, this man, I thought the last one might have been my favorite one we had together. Shit, I think you might have knocked that home run out the park and made this one, but this is just as hard.
It's just, we just have to, and then I always make sure I tie in food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. Yes. When I woke up this morning, like I was asking my grandbabies when they came in here because they wanted to get when I got in this job, these gummies, right? Which is vitamin C. But my baby, little 6-year-old, she think they candy. Grandpa, said, I have one of the orange things. I said, baby, this is a vitamin. I'm trying to keep you from getting the cold.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So I was asking them, did y'all have lunch? Because I know mommy and daddy running around shoveling snow and cleaning. And they both said they were not hungry. And they saw that we had waffles and stuff for breakfast, but you were still asleep and so forth. So we've got to know every day we wake up, we got to make sure the family's got food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security. And we got to know that that will also be there tomorrow. That means we got to get in control. Like Malcolm X said, Black nationalism is to control the economics, the politics, and the culture where you live. Let me say that one again. Ain't no Orisha gonna control that shit for you. Ain't no Oludamari gonna control it for you. You've got to control the economic, politics, and culture where you live by using the consciousness that you learn from the knowledge of the ancestors, right?
That's it.
The consciousness that developed from the knowledge left us by the ancestors is supposed to allow us to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your family, which means you must, absolutely must get in control of the economic, politics, and culture where you live, which means you must absolutely get in control of the land, labor, and resources where you live. Say that again. You must control the land, labor, and resources where you live. You must control economic, politics, and culture where you live. You will be able to provide the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for yourself and your family if you do that. And you can't do that without Pan-African unity. Wherever you're at, you must be a united community. What unites you is your belief system, your knowledge and understanding, and allegiance and alliance and commitment to African sacred science as the foundation of your consciousness. So that's what we're saying.
Yes, sir. Baba, I got another question from the tribe. I know we're getting ready to wrap it up. We're getting short on time, but I know a little bit about this, but I don't want to answer because you actually was there. So I know from based off of what my godmother told me. But the question is, hold on. Okay, did Malcolm enter the practice of Ifa and or just get it, or did he get a Yoruba name?
To my knowledge, he simply was given a Yoruba name, but Malcolm was, I can't say he didn't, when we said the practice of Ifa, we got to be careful not to think like religion.
Right.
Because you could be a Muslim and practice Ifa if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? But Malcolm, remember, I said one of his greatest supporters and best friend was whom? Baba Surgiman and the Yoruba Temple of America, who developed the Yoruba village in Georgia, South Carolina. Okay. The next closest supporter he had in that last year when he left the nation was Nana Aperi Denizulu. And he was the priest of the Akan community in America. I know that those two men were his closest collaborators and supporters. And anytime when you listen to his speeches, anytime he's having a rally, he always introduced somebody called Gus Denizulu. That's Nana Aperi Denizulu. They were always his dramas and Baba Surgiman, who were the people who opened up most of Malcolm X's rally after he left the nation. He had a very close relationship with the Yoruba community, a close relationship with the Akan community. The Yoruba people gave him that name, Omawali, the child who have returned home. That has nothing to do with whether he could or could not practice the essence of Ifa. Ifa is simply the Yoruba way of practicing. In the Congo, they don't call it Ifa, but they're practicing the same thing. In Angola, they don't call it Ifa, but they're practicing the same thing. In Swaziland, they don't call it Ifa. It's African sacred science, understanding the universe, cosmology, understanding the nature with the environment we're in, ecology, understanding who we are and how we fit into that whole thing. That's what the ancestors are trying to explain to themselves in the things we call religion or sacred science or culture. And to that degree, I think Malcolm had come to understand that. And he was beyond any religion at the time he was killed. And I think that's why the Muslim world didn't protect him, because they knew he would soon no longer be walking in that path, in that way that they were walking. They could have protected him. If Saudi Arabia said nothing better happened to that man, nothing would have happened to him. But Saudi Arabia was scared of him because he was radicalizing the young Muslims over there against the despots who was calling themselves Muslim leaders. So Yoruba is a people. It's not a tradition. It's not a religion. And the Yoruba people practice that they call Ifa, the practice of understanding the universe and the environment we live in, is one that has become very dominant in this hemisphere. But it is the understanding of sacred science that go beyond any religion. They go beyond any particular cultural group's manifestation or explanation for it. And I think Malcolm had already reached that space even before he went to Nigeria. You know, because he went to Ghana, and the religious people in Ghana also gave them blessings, but they didn't change his name or offer him a name, and they might have, he never used it. In Ghana, I'm called Nana Kofi Mpansa II. I rarely use the name, so except on occasion. I'm also near Hito Okrapong in my initiation among the Ga people. But they're all the same science. These are just different ethnic nations expressing the science. I was initiated in the Ga spiritual tradition. I was initiated in the Akan spiritual tradition. I'm more familiar with the Yoruba spiritual tradition because we are over here where that one is so dominant and it's easier to interface with others. When I go to the reading of the year next week, as I do every year, we will have the Akan tradition there, the Yoruba tradition there, the Voodoo tradition there, and the Asian one with the
Voodoo?
Huh?
Voodoo?
No, we will do the Voodoo. Voodoo priests and priestesses will be there, and the I Ching. So it's usually 5 to 6 traditions, and almost in every reading, even though they all do their reading separately, and they're just minute parts of separation between their interpretation of future. It's something to see each year. Because we're talking, there's only one sun in the sky that affects us directly. There's only one moon. Doesn't matter whether it's sun or China or sun or South Carolina, it's still the same sun, same moon, having the same effect. And each of those areas are trying to interpret their relationship to that sun shining on them. We take that interpretation and explanation, we call it religion. That's when we get into repetition and rituals and singing and dancing to acknowledge our understanding. You can't confuse the singing, dancing, and ritual and colors, a sign and things, for the science, the hardcore science we are trying to explain to ourselves. I hope that helped to answer that. But did Malcolm come out and proclaim that I'm an Ifa? No, I never heard that. And let's be clear, I met Malcolm only once for about 20 minutes. You know, I'm 16, that's 63. People assume because I took over the mosque, I knew him longer or more intimately. But no, when I came back home in 66 from the war, he had been killed. Well, I even got all the material of his killing while I was in the war. My brother sent me all the clippings. And when I said in the war, I never fought the war in Vietnam. I'm a war resistor. I resisted going to Vietnam while I was in the military. And there was a lot of us who resisted the war in the military and took court-martials and other things. But that's another story for another day. But that's when I first encountered the politics of Malcolm X. Because the CID, which is the Navy's aspect of the CIA, raided my locker and took all of my albums and clippings of Malcolm's and Kennedy assassination. I'm an 18-year-old kid, don't understand what the hell is that all about. So that's when I realized you better start learning like real fast, okay? Because there's something going on around you that you have no understanding of. Those things that they took out of my locker in 1965, which surfaced in a court case I'm involved in Boston in 1968. I went to CIA to tell the judge there was nothing that I could say that was worth believing. So I've been tracking me since 1964. So because of my political activities. And because of that, I didn't realize that it might have been because of the meeting I had with Malcolm in 1963. But anyway, when I come home from the war, I go directly to Malcolm's organization. I meet his sister, and I meet other key brothers like Willie Starks and Brother Gresham, Brother Davis, Peter Bailey. And those are the people that decided after I was only there for like 2 months when I was chosen to be a personal bodyguard to his sister. And that's the kind of trust that was imbued. And I was there 1 year when I was chosen elected. I was the only elected imam in America. I was elected by a body of people from Saudi Arabia, the Sudan, and the United States as imam of the Muslim Mosque, and then I traveled to Mecca. I was further granted my theological license to teach Islam in the West. I had to go before a body called the Rabat el-Islamim, the World Muslim League in Mecca, to be tried and true. And to be granted, and before I got there, the only other name in that book was Malcolm X, al-Sabas, and I signed under him.
That's deep. I never knew that part of the story. I knew, you're taking over the mosque and all that. I didn't know that. That's deep. Wow.
There was one other man that was in Mecca before me, but his name is not in that book. His name was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Hajj Muhammad. Elijah Muhammad had made the Hajj before Malcolm X. But it was kept on the down low because he did not want to take his people from under one dominance, white Christianity, and put them under Arab Muslim dominance. And so he wouldn't let that ride. I didn't know who they were talking about when I got to Mecca, and they asked me, how's Hajj Muhammad? And I go, like, I'm a disciple of Malcolm X. What y'all talking about? And then they sat me down and said, yo, young blood, this is the way reality looks. You may have one kind of reality, but we got another story down here. Right? We got another history. You need to learn. And I learned that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had gone to Mecca before Malcolm X. There's a lot to learn. History will erase the mystery.
This was it right here. Like this is you talking about this, not even a master's class. Hell, this is a whole damn college 4-year degree in history we got tonight, man. Like
there's another book, let me mention that for my Muslim brothers and sisters, because sometimes when we talking about Ifa, Yoruba, Akan, they feel so left out of the discussion. And yet we have a lot of brothers and sisters who come out of the Nation of Islam that represent some of the greatest leaders we have in the Black community. And we don't acknowledge that Elijah Muhammad was one of the greatest leaders we ever had because of the transformative teaching he brought. It helped so many brothers and sisters rise above the oppression of their consciousness.
And still doing it.
And so many other brothers. Minister Farrakhan has been doing it for these decades. And so we have to acknowledge that. And we are afraid to acknowledge that because the white man made us afraid to acknowledge the message. The messenger, I love you, sir. I acknowledge you. You hang out up there with the ancestors and keep teaching us. Your work was good work. And we need to learn from that work. And we're not learning. Message to the Black man should be a must-read for every Black person in America, if not in the world. And then I have a piece that was done by a young brother who was teaching at the American University in Cairo. And some years back, about 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years, I guess, 4 years, he invited me to come and give a lecture there on Malcolm X on May 19th. And I go, y'all ain't gonna get me up at Cairo and kill this brother, you know what I'm saying? And I'll do a Zoom with y'all. And so I ended up doing the Zoom lecture with them from here. And he was doing his research on Islam and the ancient mysteries, right? Of course, he couldn't publish this book in his dissertation. He could only publish an aspect of the dissertation. They weren't going to let the whole truth come out, right? This is volume 1, The Mystery Schools, Maurice Hines. And so when he left the job at the American University, he published this book, Islam and the Ancient Mysteries, volume 1. It should be a must-read for all Muslims and non-Muslims in America. So you'll see how unseparate your Islam is from African sacred science. And you'll see how close your Islam is to Yoruba and Akan and Dogon and Zulu, you know, and in the belly, you understand? And Nubian. It's all the same thing.
All connected.
Somebody just put their cultural twists on the school of thought. And so it's a beautiful piece, Islam and the Ancient Mysteries, volume 1, volume 2. And another book that came out with there's 2 other good pieces people need to learn. I think you said you had this one, but this one's called The Rebirthing the African Consciousness.
Nope, I don't got that one. Who's that one by, Baba? I'm about to get it.
His name is too long for me to pronounce. He's the young Nigerian brother.
I'll find it.
What's his name?
Got you. Appreciate it. I'll
young
find
Nigerian brother who wrote this a few years ago, and he sent me a copy. I'd never heard of him. He sent a copy with a note. I've been listening to your tapes for years, and I wanted to see, you know, send you this copy.
Wow.
And just the concept of rebirthing, because that's what we're trying to do with this body of knowledge. We're trying to rebirth the African consciousness in our people.
Yes, sir.
So that book we got to get. We already showed you Wade, and this one by my buddy, you know, and long comrade, Spirituality Before Religion.
Listen, y'all just had an event together Sunday, right?
Yeah, we did together Sunday at Nicholas Bookstore, Professor Kaba Hiawatha Khomeini. And
he's gonna be on Monday. He's gonna be on Monday.
Like me, one of those brothers whose lineage was in the population of Africa who was here before the slave ship came and married into those who came on the slave ship. So when you talk about history, some of us have lived that history, y'all are just discovering. And then this is the latest by Dr. Wade Nobles. Let me get it back. Yeah. From Black Psychology to the Science of Being, Dr. Wade Nobles. From Black Psychology to the Science of Being. You got to get this book. This brother's walking on water with his eyes closed. It's that deep, you know. So those literature, I think, would be worth looking into to help you kind of see where my head is. And I come from the same thing most of people who are my age who were in the struggle come from. I was into the campus takeovers. You know, I was into the building takeovers in the community. I remember once we took over the YWCA on 125th Street back in '69. Because we wanted to make the YWCA open a home economic program for the Black women on welfare in the community who they were servicing, but wasn't servicing, right? And I was arrested, of course, at that site after they took out an injunction against me and me and Brother Charles Powell. So we sneaked out of the building during the night so they wouldn't use our presence to raid the building and let them know that we were out of the building. But I would just taunt them by driving up every morning, me and my girlfriend, who turned out to be another cop, but that's another story for another show. But we would drive up there in the morning in the car, and I would jump out and put all the food and the pots of food out for the people jumping in the car. But all these cops across the city, it's just childish taunting, immature politics. So one day she couldn't come. So I took the car and went myself. And when I jumped out of the car and started taking out the food, here comes the NYPD finest. And I couldn't get back in the car, so I had to run. So I'm running, these cops behind me chasing me, right? And I see these 2 black cops walking the beat, walking the walk. I surrendered to the 2 black cops. And one of the black cops, he wanted to get the older one, he wanted to give me to the white boys. The white boys were saying, he's ours. And this young black cop cuffed me with his handcuff and pulled me behind and said, no, he's mine. He's mine. And there was almost a fight between them because the white dude wanted to beat me up pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
So my mother wouldn't let it happen. And the older black dude wanted to give me to them to be beat up. But the young black cop said, no, this ain't happening.
Wow.
So while I was being arrested, I saw my cousin Janie, God bless her soul, she's an ancestor now, walking down 125th Street. Janie Bacote. And by the time they get me to the 26th precinct, 200 people was there. So they thought this was my organization reacting like that. This is my family.
Wow. So you remind me of the movie.
The word got out on the phone, they got James. And when that word got out to every bar on Lenox Avenue where family hung out, everybody left them bars.
Wow.
And they came to that precinct. So they didn't book me because they were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen. My mom was leading them too. So God bless her beautiful angel soul.
Yes,
and
sir.
So they gave me a summons and let me go. And I remember I was carrying California license plate then. They were scared of anybody with a California license plate with the party stuff. And I'm black leather jacket down, beret on, the whole nine. So, but no, you have some experiences in life, right? That people say you can't write this stuff down. You certainly can't make this stuff up. I'm just blessed that God gave me the experience so I could tell the story of people like me. I wasn't the only one out there doing this. Brother Charles Powell, who became a lawyer, who's now a deacon in a church and a community leader in Harlem. He was going out there with me, Brother Marvin Brown, who now has a PhD, retired as a principal, who lived in the South. We was out there. I mean, we was like front line, fighting practice with the fist, blood flying, belt buckles. We'd been in all of that, and some of us didn't make it out as well as others. I remember one time my wife watched him on hit him with that belt, and he had grabbed his belt around his house. Said, "Boy, don't hit me with that belt." And he just tagged me right on my head, one of the big buckle, and I went down. But when I hit the ground, I landed on this tree limb about yay long with a little curve in the end. It's like, God, thank you. So I got up with that tree limb and I cut a path. He was the first one I took down. Then I cut a path to that crowd. That tree, every time I tap folks, they went out. I'm like, yeah, this is working.
Hey, everybody ain't letting everything slide, man.
To be being jovial about, but they were trying to kill us there. It was 25 of us against 200 of them, and we prevailed.
Yes, sir.
And one of the brothers in that group that was fighting beside me was a brother named Guillermo Morales. Anybody know who Guillermo Morales is?
It sounds familiar.
He's the brother that's in Cuba with Asada. Okay. He was arrested for bombing. He had lost all of his fingers in a bomb lab. And he escaped from the federal detention with his 2 thumbs in his hands, right? And he ended up in Cuba. And he's still alive, Guillermo. I hope he sees this. Yo, Willie, we still cool, bro. And my daughter Onika's 50-something years old now. So, but no, we was fighting. I mean, we didn't think we were gonna live to be this old. I mean, to tell the truth, we were just saying, okay, bite the bullet and jump in. Do it. We were ignorant. We were over emotional, but we were dedicated to do whatever we could to free our people. We weren't smart and organized and had it all together. Matter of fact, it was just the opposite. We were not very smart, had very little organized together. We just had a determination that we wanted to change something, make better something, And we did some. But it's your generation, it's your time now. Your time's on the cross.
We here, Baba. We here. Hey, look, I'm repping.
Remember, it's freedom or death should be your mantra, and learn your history to erase the mystery.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man, I'm repping the generals now, because they didn't have the numbers either in Haiti, but they had Dessalines and they had Macandal and Dutty Bookman and Cecilia Fatima, you know what I mean. So you don't always have to have the numbers; you have to have the determination.
Yeah, and they had all of these sisters. From Toya, who raised Dessalines, to Fatima, to some sisters who became generals and leaders in the army, sisters who became the head of the spy network, and the children all fought in that revolution. And They were guided by the voodoo. The voodoo, the essence of the universe as manifest in the human. You can say the essence of God, call it whatever you want. The essence of the universe. And we describe those forces with our drawing that we call bebes, describing the cosmic energy that possess us in the form of different orishas, or loas, that gave us the energy to do what we did. You know, our sacred science. You know, yes.
Bebe's on the cover of the Island Memes. He put the Bebe's on there.
But still, history is important because it comes down to the practical. To provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, you got to control economic politics and culture. To control the economic politics and culture where you live, you must get control of land, labor, and resources where you live. One can't happen without the other. But sometimes we got to do it all at the same time because of our situation. What will inform us on how to do this is our sacred science. That's what informed the consciousness that will tell the people how to constantly reinvent themselves in order to reinterpret themselves, in order to free themselves. Reinvent yourself, reinterpret yourself to free yourself.
Sure.
There we are.
Yeah, I think that's it right there. That's a mic drop. Because that was powerful, Baba. I definitely I can't thank you enough for this one. I can't thank you enough for all of them, but especially this one. This was, this went hard. It went deep.
We're
went
just talking to the people, and I'm telling you my story to tell you your story. But like I said, I wasn't alone having these experiences. There were other brothers right at my side, other sisters right at my side. Right. Most of them are ancestors now. We think about it all the time. We were just young kids, willing to sacrifice it all to make the changes we thought would make life better for the next generation. It hasn't moved as fast as we wanted to or as broadly as we anticipated, but it has moved, and it is still moving because you are now picking up the step to taking it to the next level.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I tell people all the time because that's something we can get into on another call. But I would say the negativity and the hate and all that, which we talked about before, but amongst us as a people, each other. But I feel like I don't care what people think about me, because the hell what you think about me, you got to talk to my teachers. And I don't feel like they're going to be victorious against one of my teachers, let alone all of them. So I appreciate that, Baba. I really do. And I appreciate you and all you've done for us, and culture and the movement, for sure.
So I'm the product of my teachers. They were the product of their teachers, and they were the product of their teachers.
Yes, sir.
And they were all called, we call them all collectively, the ancestors.
Yes, sir.
So we are our ancestors having this human experience.
Yes, sir.
Going forward.
Yes, sir.
And I want to drill this into people. Your mother and your father, when they created you, they simply recreated themselves. Think that through. When your mom and dad created you, they simply recreated themselves. When your grandparents, the 4, and your great-parents, the 8, and your great-great-parents, the 16, and your great-great-great-parents, the 32, and your great-great-great-great-great-parents, the 64, and on back to the millions, when they created themselves, when they created their children, they simply created themselves. And you're the culmination of millions of ancestors make up your DNA. If you can just get yourself culturally centered and historically focused, you can go back into those ancestral memory and bring forward the powers that'll make you the Fannie Lou Hamer, the Malcolm X, and the Harriet Tubman, and the Ida B. Wells, and the Martin Luther King. But you got to be able to remember that you are them and they are you. And it is that memory of your history that erases the enemy's mystery, and you can see your reality and own it, as clearly as can be. So, I think that's what they say in the studio. Like I work with the Godfather Parliament. At the end of the day, it's like, that's a wrap. Yes, time to go home, take off the makeup,
Listen, that's a whole nother story, man.
Yeah. We even have rap parties, rap parties. Wrapped up that one. But it's always good, brother, being with you and hanging out with you and having the conversation about us and what we got to do. And sitting in this place with that red, black, and green flag above me, and at the top of my head, that thing that's sitting on that flag, that's called Ezole Frida. That was given to me by Baina Bello. And of course, on this side of me, that's Shango. And next to Shango, that's Oya. And so Shango's here, and Oya is there. And there are other deities who are symbols around. And on this side, those are all my ancestors. Got to lean so you can see them well. Oh, gotta go down the other side. Gotta get this. See, they all sitting there just watching me, make sure the boy doing the right thing and saying the right thing. Because we've taught him well. My great parents, my grandparents, my great parents, and my great parents. And a bunch of cousins and siblings. So I lived for them because they lived for me. I am them as they were me before this me.
Yes, sir. Actually, what's funny? I was thinking about that on the last one we did. I wanted to ask you about the what you had back there. I had an idea. I knew the ancestors in the Igungun, but I didn't know which shrines like symbolize which deities. But the fact that you brought it up without me even asking that, you talk about spirit, doing what spirit do in the energy, man. That's powerful. Like, it really truly is. And mind you, I'm in my shrine room. I'm looking at Kabiesi Shango, I'm looking at Oya, I'm looking at Ifa, I'm looking at Imoja, I'm looking at Oshun. I got Babalu behind me. So we here now, and the spirit is definitely doing what it does.
The energy that we use them to symbolize is all a part of your consciousness. You just have to be able to stimulate it. That's what the knowledge of them allow you to do, to stimulate that body of energy that we symbolically use them to represent in you, to bring it forward into the world to cause the changes necessary to allow you the freedom that you deserve.
That's true.
That's what it's all about.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate it, Baba, man. I really do. And before we get out of here, shout out again to St. Kofa 360 720 Study Group in Jacksonville. They'll be hosting Baba Small in February for the African Black History, African cultural celebration of Black history in America. So family, if you're in the Southeast region, if you're in Florida, if you're in Georgia, if you're in South Carolina, y'all grab the tickets. They're on the website. I'll definitely be, promoting it on the website up until the event. And I'll do my best to have Baba Smalls back on, multiple times to get ready for that event. But, show some love, man, and appreciation to our elders, because without them, we're not having these conversations today, and I give thanks, Baba. I appreciate you and all that you do and all that you've done for me, and spending the time with me that you have. And I appreciate all of it because it just gives me motivation.
Let me tell people where I get the time from, because I got this most beautiful wife who for the last 53, 54 years now. And in 54 years, we didn't go through life in just a boat on smooth water. We had some rough tides. Sometimes the boat almost tipped over. Sometimes we almost deliberately turned it over. But we managed to maintain a partnership through all these years. And any freedom I've had to fight and to learn, she has been the backbone that allowed that freedom. Because we also have 4 kids that had to be raised in school and taken care of, and food, clothing, shelter, and all of those things, doing all of this experience. Had mothers and fathers who got elderly and had to be taken care of, who were ill, and some passed away. And we still have a mother, her mom, who's 98 years old now, and we're going to be going over to see her tomorrow, probably. So a lot of times when you see brothers out here or sisters out here, we have to also remember there is a mate at home, and there's children, and there's parents. And had they not allowed us the freedom to fight for freedom, because the way unconsciousness works, the very people you try to save restrict you from the process of saving them. And so you got to be thankful when you got the support of the people you're trying to fight for, fighting with you, by supporting you in the fight. So it's important for people to know that, you know. So don't just see me and don't see he's got a wife. And she was, every moment that he said he lived, that lady had to live through those moments too. So I just want you to know that she might never even had a state, but the world needs to know and understand that, you know.
Yeah.
That's what that struggle really is about.
No, that's real, Baba. I appreciate it. And shout out to Mines too, man, my queen, because it is hard and it's tough and it's not easy because, you know, I mean, I know you know long before I was even born, the sacrifice, but, you know, the spirit is real too. And shout out to my queen and my mother, you know, all the mothers, like for real. And then hell, like, both of us share you know, shout out to all the mothers and the IJ and the Yami and all the feminine energy that makes it possible for this to happen. I give thanks and, you know, I appreciate it for sure. Yes, sir.
Okay, so now I'm gonna go join her before she go to bed.
Look, you and me both.
Okay, my brother.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, Baba. Peace and blessings. So, family, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. And you know, it's been another live stream episode, a legendary live stream episode of the African Spirituality Experience. A shout out to Baba Smalls for joining us and dropping $1 million trillion worth of jewels. And I give thanks to all y'all for all the love and support. And we'll definitely see y'all on the next one. We'll be back on another live stream Monday at 10:30 p.m. with Professor Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. So those two are like a tag team, man, in regards to the movement. So we've been blessed to bring some titans and powerhouses in the consciousness community to the Ashe Street. So family, I appreciate you all, you know, riding with us on a long live stream, man. I definitely appreciate y'all. So with that, thank you. We appreciate you. Mudupwe, and don't forget to please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see y'all Monday night at 10:30. We are out. Peace. Odabo.
ẹni tó gbàgbé ilé ṣàpò ìyàgbọ́ tẹ́ǹtì ẹni takísà ní tàtàn ò bá padà sílé anítìjàkọ ẹja lọ pé eégún mo sí ẹni gbẹ́rẹ́ ìpàkọ́ forsake not your ancestors and praise your